betrayed WCW!
What in the hell is he doing here? Monday Night Raw! Monday Nitro! He is broken out!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass! Brett screwed Brett. The new world order, brother! Let's get this! We are at war!
Well, there you go. All right, Nitro number 104, also September 8th, 1997. Announcers are raining down the show. When Eric Bischoff comes out, he orders the truck to run the tape.
Well, the key here is Tony says we will never air this tape again.
I see.
And Bischoff says, no, I have more power than you know. And I thought, this show sucks. It's already falling off the rails.
Wow.
Like, does Bischoff have power or not? How come J.J. Dillon is gone because Hulk Hogan beat him up? Shouldn't Hulk Hogan, be suspended
In
or stripped
jail?
of the title or something? Instead, it's like, well, you killed J.J. Now we'll get someone else.
We'll go find
that's
somebody else.
harder to kill. This fucking show is so stupid.
You guys are literally bulletproof.
So Bischoff begins playing the Four Horsemen parody skit from last week, but before too long, the actual Four Horsemen come out to the desk. They put a stop to this, and they order, they challenge the NWO and headed down to the ring. So Gene Okerlund comes out to interview them. And I gotta say, I have seen a lot of Ric Flair in my life. I don't think I've ever seen Ric Flair in the state he was in this segment.
Right. He was very angry.
I have seen him crazy happy. I have seen him crazy pissed. I have seen him crazy sad. I have never seen Ric Flair in subdued disgust. So Hennig makes a point here. He goes first. And he explains he has spent his whole career stepping in dog do, as he put it, and not getting any on him. But now he's the man hired as the enforcer of the Horsemen, and he's not going to stand for this. Some very subtle clues going on in this whole Hennig thing. So Mongo starts to talk. They're in Green Bay, so he gets booed, and he at least addresses the Green Bay fans so the national audience has a clue what's going on. He didn't have much to say. Benoit didn't have much to say, and then it was Ric Flair's turn. And this was, for the start of this was not the Nature Boy Ric Flair. It was Richard Fleer. He says, I have been doing this 25 years all around the world. All the car rides, all the jets, all the sold-out buildings, all the big stars I've wrestled. Last week was the first time I was ever embarrassed to be a pro wrestler. Says Arn was a legitimate legend, a legitimate human being, a legitimate man, and everyone in the sports world should have recognized him as a great performer every day of his career. None of you guys will ever have friends in this business like I have a friend in Arn. And finally, he snapped and went into Ric Flair mode. He calls out Nash and Conan and Bagwell and Six. He vows they will not leave until they come out, and the show goes to commercial.
It was awesome. You could see him physically get redder and redder and redder as he was yelling. And I just thought somebody needs to put a blood pressure cuff on this guy and see exactly how far it goes before it spikes.
You know, all of these shows, Vinny's favorite segments with the Horsemen and Jarrett, and Flair's just out there talking about women and drinking. It's been a while. I can think of one in the last 2 years. One great Ric Flair promo. This man went back to the 80s here.
Oh, yeah?
He had something to sink his teeth into.
Oh, that's true.
And he cut a great fucking promo here.
So they go to break. They come out. They come back. The Horsemen are still out there. And here comes WCW security to clear the ring. And by that I mean Doug Dillinger and two other guys to enter the ring and say, come on, guys, let's go. And it worked.
I was going to say, they did.
They went from saying,
said,
we're not leaving,
we will not leave,
to them just leaving.
And Doug was like, dude, you guys got to leave. We got
You couldn't even have, high voltage go out there and get their asses kicked, or at least the Horsemen could blow off some steam.
Or I have an idea. How about Doug Dillinger comes out with a note, and they read it, and then they leave? Because the note's saying, you're going to get the guys tonight.
I guess.
Or have Gene tell them that.
Actually, they're getting them at the pay-per-view.
Well, that's
they had a match tonight.
True.
So, as security is nicely asking the Horsemen to leave, and the Horsemen are nicely leaving, Tony Schiavone says, hey, where was security last week? That is a fine question. Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio Jr.
You know, some people are going to get very mad at this. Maybe I'll change my mind within the next week or two, but these would be the two best guys in the Cruiserweight class.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Duh.
Unbelievable.
And it wasn't even their best stuff.
No.
These were the two best luchadors on this show.
Mike Tenay very casually notes they had many six-man tags together, but this is their first singles match ever.
Was it really?
That's what Tenay said, and there's few announcers I would trust on that.
No,
like
he
Tenay.
must be right. But
Yeah.
that's amazing.
He did note they've had many six-man tags.
I do remember, this is jumping ahead, but the Halloween Havoc mask versus hair match. Was it mask versus hair? Whatever it was.
I think so.
Ray's mask was on the line, is all that matters.
Yeah.
What a match. Oh, it was
Is
mask
that-
versus title.
Is that this year?
It was mask versus title. I'm not sure if it was this year. It must have
98.
been this year.
Had to have been this year.
Yeah. This match was like 12 minutes.
We may have to watch it.
It may have been 11. I gave it 5 stars.
Oh, yeah.
11-minute 5-star match.
I'm pretty sure everyone did.
God, they were great.
So, the crowd was not into this all the way through. They loved to boo Eddie, but they're not totally into the match. Then the story was this crowd was actually here. Like I say, they were here to see the stars and cheer for them. They didn't really care much about wrestling matches. Until Ray gets thrown outside, but he jumps over the apron, and he hits this awesome springboard Rana. It looks so great. And first of all, the move looks good, and so the crowd pops. And the ref drops to count, and then the crowd, you can almost feel it. I know it's a very short time, but you can actually feel this build. They go from, oh my god, that was a cool move. Oh my god, Ray might actually win. Oh my god, Ray won. They were all very, very happy at that.
Now that I think about it, and maybe somebody could find one, I think that Halloween Havoc match, if everyone would agree that it's 5 stars, which I don't think everybody will because it's 11 minutes, but that would make it probably the greatest 11-minute 5... That'd be the shortest 5-star match of all time. That's the best 11-minute match ever.
Yeah, probably.
Because I can't think of any other 5-star match that's less than 14, 15, 20 minutes. 11 minutes.
It is certainly a great match, and you should all go watch it if you've never seen it. Or if you have seen it, actually.
We'll have to watch it again.
The Nitro girls danced, but before we saw them dancing, we heard their music and got an extended shot of the whitest fans of all time doing the whitest possible clapping along to the dance music.
And they announced the Nitro girls will be going to your house if you win this Nitro Party contest.
They're bringing the Nitro balloons.
And the way Tony said it was so creepy. God
Yeah.
bless the guy. He goes, we're going to be sending the girls to your living room.
I would enter this contest.
Really? Wow.
Oakland interviewed DDP, who admitted that he and Lex Luger were butting heads and couldn't see eye to eye. But they were booked on Team WCW at War Games. They had to work together on that day, so they had to get their differences ironed out. And if they couldn't do it verbally, maybe they should settle things in the ring. Lex comes out. He accepts the challenge, but he wants Paige to know, if we do this, I'm not going to hold anything back. Are you cool with that? And Paige was cool with that. So that was it.
I like that segment.
It was great.
That was a very good segment.
Fine. Disco Inferno versus Hugh Morris. They're doing this match, and Hugh's making his comeback, and Alex Wright comes out and dances at ringside.
We should add that right before Alex came out, the match fell apart.
Yeah.
And Alex came out at the exact perfect time to distract the crowd from this match completely falling off a cliff.
So Alex comes out, he jumps in the apron, Hugh punches him. That's right, I remember this finish now. Alex jumps in the apron, but he gets punched. And Morris goes up top, and the ref goes with Morris. So Alex slides, I believe it's the cruiserweight belt he has. He slides the belt into Disco, thinking Disco will use this as a weapon. But Disco is dumb. So Disco's lying on his back, and he grabs the belt, and he holds it above him, looking at it like, where did this come from? Who left this belt here? And he's holding it up there, and Hugh Morris hits a moonsault on top of the belt, on top of Disco, and pins him and gets the win. That finish was great.
It was great, and I interpreted it a little differently than you. I thought that Alex threw the belt in for him to use, but it was not that Disco was confused. It was that he grabbed it, and he was suddenly smitten by the gold and the jewels and the bling. And he was like, oh my God, look at this fucking thing. And then a 320-pound man smashed him to death.
Yes.
Like Gollum.
Yeah.
I gotcha. I was surprised Hugh Morris in this match, he did a spin wheel kick and at one point ran up the ropes.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if I thought this at the time, but going back and watching these Nitros, Hugh is The best way I can put it is you watch his matches and think, why are you not better?
That's exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a very agile, average to below average worker.
But why? Why is he average? Because he looks great. He's got charisma. He's huge. He can move.
Because he didn't get it.
He clearly,
which is a great irony.
He did not get it. He just never did. Anyway, so Alex tried to revive Disco, but Disco was pissed, and he shoved him, and they argued. Nash, Six, Bagwell, and Conan came out for a promo.
Fucking Nash.
NWO is all over this show.
Nash is wearing a flannel, a fanny pack, and sweatpants.
Not noticed that.
And the blue bandana around the head to match the flannel.
I took it as he was trying to dress like Conan.
Right.
But I did not notice the fanny pack and sweatpants, to be fair.
I was trying to figure out, so Conan was definitely dressed as Mongo.
Yes.
I'm not sure what X-Pac was wearing, what Six was wearing. Was he supposed to be ripping off Flair?
Not here.
And then Nash
was just being Nash.
Nash was just being a clown because he didn't give a shit, and he was making $500,000 or $750,000.
Yeah.
And no one did anything to him.
No.
He did whatever the hell he wanted.
Yeah.
I can't even tell if I'm really mad at the guy or not. I mean, I was really mad last week, but I guess here's what I'm going to say. Because Scott Hall was not involved in this, and Scott Hall later came out and wrestled Super Calo.
By himself.
Now listen, Scott Hall had a lot of problems in his personal life. He crashed a lot of cars. He attended a lot of rehab. But he always seemed like a decent guy. He would go in there with these numbskulls and he would sell for them. Like, he sold for Super Calo for no good reason before he beat the guy. Right?
Yeah.
He was always, whenever there was a match, it was Nash that wouldn't do a goddamn thing, and Hall would be in there trying to have a match and trying to do stuff.
Yes.
It's kind of like, do I really blame Nash? I guess I kind of do. Because your buddy sure went out there and tried. Why the fuck didn't you try?
But at the same time, if you are employed and you are a colossal screw-up and nobody's calling you on it, nobody's sending you home early.
It's called pride.
I understand that. But if you can get away with it and nobody's telling you no, why wouldn't you try to get away with it?
Because it's called pride.
I understand that, Brian.
Well, I'm answering your question. That's why. Because the man should have some pride.
Nash was proud of what he could get away with.
This sucked.
I just want to know why the Outsiders were still the reigning tag team champions. Why did they never do anything together? They stayed way far apart and would defend the titles like once every 8 weeks. Anyway, they ran down the Horsemen. Let's see. Nash says, we're all big stars. We're too busy for the Horsemen. Bagwell says, I'm not doing anything. Conan spits some catchphrases, and eventually it is announced that Bagwell and Conan will face the Horsemen later. Brad Armstrong versus Chris Jericho.
Brad Armstrong cut off his mullet and apparently sprouted body hair because of it.
All right.
Am I wrong?
I don't know.
He was a very hairy man here.
They are once again editing in Jericho's WWF music, so I guess that's just going to be a theme for the rest of these Nitros. Eddie Guerrero runs out. Okay, pay attention to this. Eddie runs out and says, Brad, I need you to do me a favor. Last week, Jericho got lucky and beat me. I need to beat him to prove I deserve a title match, so I need you to step aside tonight so I can avenge my loss. And Armstrong replied, leave, or, quote, I'll whoop you. So Eddie left. They had a match. Fans didn't care. Eddie returned. He attacked Jericho from behind for the DQ. Eddie Guerrero attacked Chris Jericho, leading to Brad Armstrong losing the match. By the way, this is also where it occurred to me that on both these shows, you can see the fans just absolutely stopped caring about wrestling entirely and just wanted to cheer for the big moments. So Armstrong, having had this match lost now due to the interference of the man who he had threatened to whoop earlier, put it all behind him. And Armstrong and Eddie double-teamed Jericho until it went to break.
Well, maybe they were in cahoots. I don't know.
The Nitro Girls Nitro Girls danced, and they showed the exact same group of white fans they had showed before. This cannot have been an accident. Bobby Heenan joins the announce desk. Hogan and Bischoff come out.
Yeah.
Why, when Eric Bischoff came out for promos with Hulk Hogan, did he hold his arms out to his side and run around like he was an airplane?
I don't know.
Was this ever explained?
Maybe he was high.
Ask us the question. So Hogan runs down Ric Flair for being a crybaby.
Hogan says he's too big, too rich, and too tan.
Too tan.
For anyone in this company.
We do need someone to come in whose gimmick is that they're over-tanned and totally obsessed about it. So
we got one.
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan.
Well, I mean, in 2016. Yeah. So he runs down Sting. Bischoff calls Sting a coward. And everyone points up to the rafters, and Hogan's warming up doing the Brock Lesnar dance, and then a dummy that looks like Sting starts to descend.
Now, before we get to the dummy, I just want to mention one thing. The only thing I liked about this. Hogan and Bischoff come out and they challenge Sting. And there's no Sting to be found. However, there was a moment where all the fans started looking up at the rafters, and Hogan was initially scared. Mm-hmm. Because the whole idea is, they're presuming Sting is not there, so they're all cocky. But when the moments come where they think, oh shit, he may actually be here, they get scared. But then when they find out he's not here, they get cocky again. I do like that. And then they drop the fucking dummy.
So the dummy descends, and it's not so much... My memory was that they cut the cord, and they did not do that. They just lowered the dummy way too fast, and then cut away right before the dummy hit the ground. And they go back, and the dummy is laying there in an unnatural angle, and the fans in the immediate area are all laughing. They can clearly tell that this is not a human being.
But the others...
The other fans in the building...
are horrified.
Yeah.
That's the key here. So...
Yep.
Obviously, Owen had not fallen yet.
It was 18 months or so.
And so you can't say, in hindsight, this was so horrible.
Well, you can.
Well, that's what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
You can't say it because of what happened with Owen. Because this happened before that happened.
Yeah.
So we're looking back at a show 19 years later. However, they had shots of fans who were fucking horrified.
Yeah.
They thought that Sting fell from the rafters and was dead.
Yes.
Now, when this ends, I mean, basically what happened was they throw the dummy in the ring, and Eric has a ref shirt on, and Hogan drops the leg on the dummy and then pins it, and Eric counts to pin. This was actually like a totally fine professional wrestling angle. Why did they have to drop the dummy and kill it?
I have no idea.
Like, if you would have taken that out, this would have been really good. But instead, they scared the shit out of the fans who paid their tickets and thought Sting died.
And the people on TV, I'm sure, at first.
What
yeah.
Utter bullshit.
How, putting Owen Hart aside for a moment, how anyone could think at any point this was a good idea to do, I don't know. Lee Marshall did the Road Report made a weasel joke.
You know, I don't want to talk too much about the Owen thing, but I will say, if you read the lawsuit regarding Owen falling from the ceiling, and you read how WWE strapped this guy in, to WCW's credit, they dropped Sting from the ceiling like 100 times, and he had like big time, massive 2 double gimmicks that he had to get out of every time he came down from the ceiling. That's why when he came down, it took forever for him to get out of the whole deal and then get his ass in the ring and do the angle. So you got to give those guys credit. They were not messing around with dropping Sting from the ceiling.
There was the one time when he had to drop down, unhook himself, fight the NWO, hook himself back up, fight off the NWO with a cord wrapped around his neck, then hook up Paige, and then they got zoomed up.
That was scary.
That was terrifying.
That was... But still, I believe it was like a double strap and double carabiner and the whole 9 yards.
I'm sure there was double straps on both of them. I'm sure they did it right. Okay, let's talk about the best match in the history of the world.
They've had better ones, but this was pretty good.
This is the best match in the history of this episode of Nitro.
That's for sure.
The Steiners versus the Faces of Fear. So the Faces of Fear get in there, and they throw the Steiners all over the place. And the Steiners get in there, and they throw the Faces all over the place, and they throw them out of the ring, and they do their bulldog pose, where Rick gets down on all fours and barks, and Scott stands behind him and puts his hands on his shoulders, and this is the classic Steiners brothers pose. And then it's 1,000 times, and it's just a taunt to say, we have taken over the ring. Word of advice, do not taunt the Faces of Fear. Because they saw this, they thought this was bullshit, and they stormed into the ring and beat the fuck out of these guys. Oh, it was great. Meng did a standing dropkick. Rick tried a sunset flip, and Meng avoided it by performing a kata. He hit Rick with a double headbutt. Barbarian misses the diving headbutt, and the best part of this is on the apron, Meng is so disappointed.
I was hoping this would be mentioned. I have never seen such emotion out of Ming.
No,
He arched his back and he grabbed his head with both hands and then he threw them forward.
Oh, no, it's so hard.
I cannot believe the ball bearing missed that fucking headbutt.
Now I'm going to have to fight more.
Let me tell you my favorite part of this match.
I
So,
bet I know, but go ahead.
the fucking Barbarian gets crotched on the top rope, which is hilarious, by the way. You've never seen a lamer crotch on the top rope, but it doesn't matter. They're just tough guys. Balls are so big he has to do it poorly to not hurt himself. So Scott Steiner crawls
I know
up
the feeling.
to the middle rope. And so the Barbarian is outside the ring standing on the middle rope. Scott Steiner is inside the ring standing on the middle rope. And Scott grabs the guy for the belly to belly. Now, did the Barbarian step onto the top rope so that he could jump and do a flip and assist Scott Steiner?
That is not correct.
No. And it's not even like he didn't have time. He just didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And Scott Steiner didn't give a shit. And so Barbarian just stood there, and Scott Steiner grabbed him, and he threw him with a belly-to-belly and dropped him right on his head and shoulders. And Barbarian didn't care.
No.
He just took the move.
Oh, yeah.
That was so amazing.
My favorite part of the match was the very first thing that happened. Scott Steiner turned around and Barbarian hit him with a belly-to-belly. They didn't exchange blows. There was no stare down.
No.
The very first thing that happened in this match is Barbarian hit Scott Steiner with a belly-to-belly.
So neither of those is my favorite part.
I gotta say one more thing. I don't endorse this, but I do laugh every time. I see it with Scott Steiner. We saw it with Captain Redneck on the NWA show. Dick Murdoch a couple of weeks ago. When a guy is gonna do a suplex, and he's just gonna do it, and you either go up or you don't, but one way or the other, he's gonna fucking throw you. That's what Scott Steiner does. Scott Steiner was going for that middle rope belly to belly, and the Barbarian really should have put his foot on the top rope and jumped. But when he didn't, Scott Steiner didn't care. He didn't say, hey, Uli Uli, or whatever the fucking Barbarian's real name is. I forget what it is. That's Meng's real name.
Sione, I believe.
Sione,
Yes.
yeah. He doesn't go, hey, Sione, step up onto the top rope, buddy. I'm going to throw you. No, he just fucking threw him. He didn't give a shit.
No.
The guy was being thrown. He either helped or he didn't.
Yeah.
And it was his fault.
Yes. So my favorite part is actually much simpler than all these. I believe it happened right after the belly-to-belly that Brian's talking about off the ropes there. But this match breaks down into a four-way, and they pair off. And Scott and the Barbarian are in one corner of the ring brawling. And in the other corner, Rick Steiner and Meng are having the best brawl ever. And they're just wailing on each other. Most UFC fights are not this intense. This is so awesome. And they're just punching each other, and it was great. So they all start hitting finishers, and Harlem Heat and Wrath and Mortis run in, and we got a crap double DQ finish to probably set up a meaningless four-way at the pay-per-view. But God, this action was awesome. This is exactly what I want from wrestling matches.
Yeah.
When people ask, what kind of wrestling do you like? Steiner Brothers versus Faces of Fear.
Yeah.
The carbon copy.
What people don't understand is no one could not like it.
Yeah.
It is impossible to not like giant dudes wailing on each
It's
other.
the best.
It's impossible. I don't care what style of wrestling you like.
Super Calo versus Scott Hall. First of all, Hall comes out and he notes that Calo's wearing sunglasses. Referee, he must remove those shades. And he indicated this several times until learning they were part of his mask. So yes, Brian's right. This was just barely not a squash. Hall took 90% of the match. The point of the match was to get Hall over. But he just wrestled. He just wrestled Calo. He was never embarrassed him. He gave him some stuff. He said, "What can you do?" And Calo says, "Well, you grab my arms from behind, and I'll do a flipping kick off your chest." Hall says, "All right, cool, we'll do that." And Calo says, "All right," and then I'll run up the ropes and I'll jump backwards and do a reverse diving headbutt. And Hall says, "Okay, cool, I'll do that." They did those two spots. Then Calo went up top, and Hall cut him off, and he did his finish and won. But what a pro! What a total pro!
As stated, Scott Hall came out by himself, nobody else in the NWO with him. After the match, Big Bubba saunters down to ringside.
Let's discuss Ray Traylor.
Now, what I got out of this is last week, Bubba cut that awesome promo. Mm-hmm. He then goes down to the ring and gives Scott Hall a spinebuster.
Yes.
And then Vincent runs out. And he disposes of him too. And all of a sudden, I'm back behind Big Bubba Rogers. I'm like, this guy, Ray Traylor, he's got some steam.
We are simpatico, Craig.
He's got some steam.
We are of one mind.
I am gonna support this man. He is a world beater.
And you know who else felt that way? Everyone in Green Bay.
They were going
place
nuts.
was going ballistic for Ray Traylor.
And then Vince, what happened?
8 seconds later, Hogan distracts Traylor. Razor drops him with the Razor's Edge.
Traylor's on the middle rope yelling at Hogan, so he's in position for Hall to very easily get him up for the edge, because this is a big, heavy guy to try to hoist up there.
I should not gloss over that fact, yes. They strip his shirt off so we can all see he's fat, and they paint Ray with a question mark on his back and ask, Ray who? And that's how it ends.
And Hogan says he's the big lost man and goes, ha, ha, ha.
For a minute and 27 seconds,
Yes.
I was a Ray Traylor fan.
Get Sting out of Starrcade, put this man in the main event. That's, for that moment in time, that's how huge this was. And they just turfed it.
That's their gimmick.
It is.
That's WCW's gimmick. To be dumb shits.
Speaking of dumb shits.
Yes, sir.
I use that term not to reference Dean Malenko and Psychosis. They had a match next. I use that not to reference Mark Curtis, who's the referee. I use dumb shits to reference the fan who thought it'd be a good idea to run into this match.
So apparently this guy was either getting married or engaged. And he thought, I must get on national television.
Why do you know the backstory?
For my girl.
He did write a book.
That's true. I'm always wondering, what is in these people's heads when they hit the ring?
I just told you. He was either getting married or he was getting engaged, and he thought, I must get on national television.
You know what I would actually legit pay for? I know everyone's excited about the last Battle of Atlanta and all the other great stuff on the network.
A compilation of numbskulls hitting the ring.
A compilation of fans hitting the ring and getting their asses beat. Because it doesn't happen anymore for various reasons. Wrestling has changed. Society has changed. The legal system has changed. But it used to be, if you hit the ring, it was your funeral, and it's our job to get you there. This fan hits the ring. And this is not a small guy. Probably the biggest dude in the ring, in fact. And he steps to the ropes, and Curtis sees him coming, and as he's stepping through the ropes, Mark Curtis hits a knee lift right to the head. Drills him. Just
all 110 pounds.
Drills this guy.
Mark Curtis.
And then he takes him down in a guillotine and holds him down until security gets there. My favorite part of this show that didn't involve the Steiners and the Faces of Fear.
You know what's funny is, back in the carnival days, when the wrestlers take on all comers, usually there's a bunch of drunk numbskulls at the fair. And so the drunk dipshit gets in the ring and you just school the guy.
Sure.
But every now and then you'd see the guy who wasn't drunk, and he looked like he was built like an amateur. And so, the moment he was stepping through the ropes, you kicked that fucker right in the face.
Yeah.
Exactly as Mark Curtis did here. And then he grabbed him and put him in a guillotine and held him down till security dragged him away. And then, Mark Curtis has just been in a real fight with a fucking fan that hit the ring.
Much bigger than him.
He stands up and he calls the action.
Oh yeah, you got a job to do.
Out sweating, not breathing hard, not even looking over to see whatever happened to the guy. This man hit the ring, he did his job, and he kept doing his other job. What a great man.
So in the middle here, the match just continued for a long time, in fact. And the announcers, out of nowhere, suddenly say, you know, fans, we know the top of the hour is coming up, but we're going to go way longer.
And they did.
I didn't write down what they said, but they said, we know we're going to go way past 2 hours tonight. No reason, no planning involved.
We're going to give you your no money's worth as a free television viewer.
Psychosis hits a tope, and Tony Schiavone says, you know, the more I see of those suicide dives, the more I wonder, what does that accomplish?
Well, you know...
Burying the entire division.
You know, Larry... I didn't mind when Tony said it, because they did do a suicide dive, and they both crashed and burned and were down dead. So he kind of did have a point. Like, what was the point of this? You're both dead. This was kind of stupid.
So...
Not like Larry who buries them in their art.
So the fans gave zero shits about this match. Another fight broke out in the crowd.
Yeah.
Psychosis finally hits a Tijuana jam for a near fall, And Sonny Ono gets taken out, and Malenko hooks the cloverleaf for the win. Out come Jeff Jarrett alongside Deborah. Jarrett says, "It's time to bring some excitement out here. These fans are not impressed by you putting 1,001 holds on some cruiserweight." And he had a point. They weren't. He wanted a match against Malenko right now. So Dean charges, and Jarrett says, no, I want a contract first. Jarrett flees to the back. Deborah tries to step in Malenko's way and says, "Stop right there, you little troll." He blows her off. He goes to the back. So Deborah turns to the camera. Deborah cuts a promo saying, "Jarrett deserves to be U.S. champion. Malenko is about as popular as pigeon dropping," she said. She finishes, and she looks in the camera and says, "There." And she turns and she leaves.
It wasn't even over the house mic, and she got so much heat for just talking.
Well,
now, at this point, they do not go to break. They do not have the announcers chat for a minute. Suddenly, we're in the ring with Gene Okerlund. We have gone in one segment from fan running into the ring to a wrestling match that no one cares about, to a finish, to a challenge, to a promo, to Gene doing an interview. He says there is a new acting chairman in WCW. I don't know who it is, which I completely believe, by the way. And out comes Roddy Piper. And Piper, he had 3 points. He made his points and he was done. I've seen a lot of Roddy Piper WCW promos where he just goes off and who the hell knows where he's been.
he was very regimented this time.
Yes.
He knew exactly what he needed to say. Didn't get distracted.
No.
There were a couple of points where he was trying to be funny and no one was laughing.
He made a joke or two at the beginning.
and he waited.
Yeah.
And then just kept going.
Yeah. But he said, look, number one, it's clear to me that Sting wants a match with Hulk Hogan. And every time Hogan comes out here, he says he wants Sting. So if they want each other so bad, I am going to make sure we get a match between those two booked by the end of the year. Number two, last year at Halloween Havoc, I had a contract against Hulk Hogan. And that contract went unfilled. Well, now I'm in charge. So I'm booking myself in a rematch against Hulk Hogan in a steel cage at Halloween Havoc for this year. Number three.
You know, what's funny is he mentioned that he'd earned it, and the numbskulls backstage had forgotten about it.
Basically, yeah.
Well,
And I believed 1,000% that Piper remembered he'd earned it, and that those numbskulls backstage forgot about
I'm
it.
sure that's true.
And he made sure that we were reminded.
Yeah. Number three, for War Games, he is taking Luger and Page out of the match. It's clear their heads are not on square. We're just going to do it very simple. It's going to be the Four Horsemen against the NWO. And he was done.
finally, on the go-home show, we got a main event for War Games.
Was this the go-home show?
Yeah.
Well, until the Horseman skid occurred, and I guess everyone's feelings were not so hurt this week, I don't think that was going to be the main event. They changed it. I don't know what the main event was going to be.
Luger, Flair, Page, and some random fourth guy against four random NWO dudes.
Yeah.
So we had Conan and Buff Bagwell versus Ric Flair and Kurt Hennig.
Oh my God, I got to talk about this. This had to be the worst Ric Flair match of the last year. Flair was bad. Bagwell was bad. They were bad together. Kurt Hennig was by far the best guy in the match, and he barely did anything. And then the match just totally fell apart at the end.
It started off bad and then fell apart. That is true.
Wow.
There was a point here where all four dudes and the ref were all standing around looking at each other because someone was out of position, clearly, and no one was quite sure who. Now, okay, the wrestling was not very good, but the Hennig storytelling continues to be excellent because the NWO comes out, Flair and Hennig run out there, and they work together, and they whip ass, and they clear the ring. And Bagwell bails, and he looks up at Hennig and screams, "What are you doing?" They calm down, they start the match proper. Bagwell demands Hennig leaves, and Flair starts, and he gets his wish. So they're working over Flair for a long time. Eventually, Hennig comes in, and Hennig works a normal match. He's attacking them. They cut him off for a while. They're working him over. It goes on a long time. It's not good. And finally, Hennig pins Bagwell with a fisherman suplex. Now let's go back here. Hennig, for many weeks, said he was not going to be a part of the Four Horsemen. He wanted to be a free agent. And 2 weeks ago, they had a segment with Arn where Arn retired. Hennig could no longer turn down this honor. They do the NWO skit last week. Then Hennig comes out here on this very show, and his exact words were, "The Four Horsemen have hired me to be the enforcer." Then he comes out here. Bagwell is stunned and surprised and confused that Hennig is attacking them and being violent. Then the match goes on, and eventually Hennig wins and he leaves. So what's going on here? And I I may be putting more into this than they planned, and by the end of this, maybe it won't turn out to be as great as it seems. But the storyline seems to be, while the Horsemen have hired Hennig, he has also been talking to the NWO, hinting he might join their side if they can make him a better offer, but they haven't done it yet. So for right now, he's still a Horseman. We'll see if it turns out to be that way. DDP versus Lex Luger. Remember 1 month ago when Lex was the hottest star in all of wrestling? Within about 90 seconds, fans are chanting boring here loudly.
Because it was fucking boring.
It was also
Which is funny because
a 3-hour show.
I like the storyline, and I like how the whole thing ended, but nobody cared about the match.
No. So Page throws Luger out of the ring, but then he himself immediately goes down selling. The NWO comes out, they're beating Luger up. Page never saw this. He sees the NWO ringside, he is suspicious, but he has a job to do, so the match continues. Lex fires up, makes a comeback, but...
Yeah, what a comeback.
Well.
These running clotheslines, which are hideous, and then he's thrown outside and he just goes flying.
He throws himself outside.
Yeah.
He went to throw another terrible clothesline, and Page ducked.
And then DDP does a pescado, and all of the NWOs are on ringside. Now, how many fucking times have we talked about how someone has to hit you for it to be a DQ? Mm-hmm. If you hit them, it's not a DQ. How many times have we said that? No matter how stupid it is, everybody goes, well, Brian, if you hit the guy who's interfering, it's not a DQ. But if he hits you, it's a DQ. Well, here we go, the example. DDP just starts hitting the NWO for the DQ. He hit them, not vice versa.
So a brawl breaks out. Giant comes out to even the odds in favor of Page and Luger. And he hits the ring. I think he slams somebody first, but he goes to chokeslam Vincent.
Yeah.
Who is not, by pro wrestling standards, a particularly big guy, especially in the 1990s. And he's in there with the Giant. And I think this happened once before. Vincent deadweights him. Mm-hmm. Giant could barely get this guy up to his own head level.
Because he sucks.
Because he sucks. He sucks so bad. So he hits this sort of chokeslam thing. NWO bails. Giant disappears. Then we have like 2 minutes left to kill. So Page and Luger stand side by side and they dare the NWO to fight. Hall and Savage get some silver cheese heads from the fans and wear them to the back. And Page and Luger, and this is actually, they could not have scripted a better finish to this little mini storyline. They agree they have a common enemy, and they go to high five, and they totally fuck it up. You've never seen two men screw up a high five so bad. And that's the end of the show.
All right, a few things. Number one, going back a match, that awesome Ric Flair promo where he was so fired up and motivated. God, he had a bad match. Then, as we talked about, this show went well past the top of the hour. For this. This is why the show had to go 15 minutes long. This fucking match that everyone chanted boring for. You are underselling these cheese heads. We got a match here, and they're setting up this War Games or whatever, and you've got Luger and Page in the ring. Page is taking this 100% deadly serious. Luger's kind of just there, because he doesn't give a shit anymore after what happened a month ago.
Yeah.
And Hall and Savage just put these pieces of cheese on their head, and they walk to the back like they couldn't possibly give a shit.
No.
What a disaster. They should have ended at the top of the hour. They should have gone off the air with this match starting and said, you gotta tune in Sunday to find out what happened.
There's way too much NWO on this show. And I know it's just getting started.
I cared a hell of a lot less about Fall Brawl after this show went off the air than I did going in. And I didn't care one bit going in.
We are at war!
Nitro number 105, also September 15th. This is the show after Fall Brawl.
So the show opens with Ric Flair dead on a gurney.
Yeah.
Now,
He looked like they had just finished an autopsy.
well, what happened was, that's not what happened. But
Randy Savage gig him again?
like an autopsy, they had marks on him where they were going to cut into him.
Yeah.
Because I guess he was getting a facelift or something.
Oh, yeah.
So they have him laying on this slab, and they've got these dashes up on his hairline.
Uh-huh.
Like, what? What?
Yeah, you look like Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah. So they go to the announce desk, and Tony Schiavone's beside himself. He's having great difficulty even speaking. He's on the verge.
We talk about stern Mike Tenay staring sternly into the camera in the most stern manner possible.
Tenay says, I got my start in wrestling because I was a minor league baseball announcer, and 13 years ago, Ric Flair put in a good word for me and got me in the door. He started my career. And he couldn't get much farther. He couldn't continue. He takes off his headset. He slumps back in his chair for a while. Tenay and Zbyszko are talking. He's looking at them, but he's not responding. And finally, Schiavone just shakes his head, and he stands up and he walks off. He did not return on the show. He was so brokenhearted over happening to his friend, Ric Flair.
He's so brokenhearted that Ric Flair is getting a new face.
It's a very, very somber and serious moment, which led us to our next match. Dean Malenko versus the Disco Inferno.
When they go from Ric Flair's funeral with a eulogy by Tony Schiavone,
yeah,
and suddenly the Disco Inferno's music starts blaring over the loudspeakers,
Yeah.
I'm like, who the fuck formatted this show? A clown?
I'd kind of like to have Disco Inferno's theme played at my funeral, by the way. That'd be fun.
Disco Fever?
Sure. So yes, Disco Inferno wrestled Dean Malenko. This was hysterical because Dean comes out with his knee all taped up. He's lumbering and limping all over the place. Zbyszko says, clearly this man is not in condition to wrestle tonight. He has a bad knee. He's going to hurt himself. The referee needs to stop this match. And as Larry is saying this, Dean on one leg is whipping Disco's ass. Just destroying him. Eventually, Disco cuts him off, works over the knee for a bit. Dean makes his comeback. This place went ape shit for him.
My God, it's just amazing. You look back at these shows and you always knew Dean was good, but now we've been blown away by really how good he actually is.
Uh-huh.
But then you look at the fans also going crazy for Dean Malenko.
This is the key.
Somebody somewhere is doing some stupid fucking shoot interview talking about how Dean Malenko's a vanilla midget,
Yeah.
and nobody cared about him, and he was just a generic guy. That's a load of horse shit. He was over, and he was great. And they didn't do a goddamn... Actually, you know what? I can't even say they didn't do a goddamn thing with him because he was a multi-time champion. But they could have done more. Mm-hmm. He was great, and they loved him.
He won with the double underhook powerbomb and the cloverleaf, and everyone was happy. Faces of Fear versus Harlem Heat.
This was something.
Did you guys watch these shows back-to-back like I did?
Oh, yeah.
So, we watched the Bret Hart match. That show ended. We watched the Disco match. And then we watched this. Now, this was much, much, much better than the Bret Hart match. But it was similar.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, thank God I didn't watch SmackDown in this match, because I would have seen Dean Ambrose and Becky Lynch running underwater, and then watch Booker T here hit the ropes with such speed and fury.
Yeah.
It was like the Olympics were back on. I never saw a guy hit the ropes like this. Even Shawn Michaels.
Now, there is an award in the Year-End Observer Awards for Best Move of the Year, right?
I don't know if there is.
There has been in the past.
Best Finisher.
Best Finisher.
I think it's still there.
Okay. I haven't checked, but I'm going to assume that the best move of 1997 was the Faces of Fear for taking a dude back to their corner and mauling him like two polar bears. It's the best.
It is quite great.
It is phenomenal. So, they got the heat on Stevie Ray, and Stevie Ray was not nearly as lazy as Bret Hart. He was not nearly as bad as Bret Hart, but he was fucking terrible. And the longer he was in there, the worse it got. And finally, it was beyond time for him to make the hot tag. And he was so totally lost, the faces both just fell down. And you can almost see them pointing and screaming, "Tag out, dude! Leave! Get out! Get your brother!" Booker T comes in. He's great.
Oh my God, what a fiery, athletic babyface comeback this was.
So awesome. He hits the sidekick on Barbarian, and he goes to make the cover, but the ref won't count because Barbarian is not the legal man. Just like in the Raw main event.
Right.
Meng puts Booker in the Tongan death grip, and they are the legal men, so Meng wins.
I did love when they are going for the finish, and Nick Patrick screaming, "No, no, no, he's not the legal man." And in the background, you just see Meng howling and doing a kata.
Yes.
And of course, Stevie turns around and he gets the Tongan death grip, and he's killed.
Stevie was a superstar in this match, mostly because he saved Meng's life on a suplex. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was mistimed, if somebody didn't jump at the right time, but he had to physically keep him in the air from falling straight on his head.
I remember the suplex I know you're talking about, but I believe Meng's life was in danger in the first place because of Stevie Ray. So I can't really give him credit for saving him.
Well,
it was his fault in the first place.
He didn't drop him.
Nitro Girls danced. Kimberly then joined Gene and DDP for a promo. More on the there are no coincidences front. Randy Orton stole DDP's move. And lately, Randy Orton has been wearing t-shirts and a hoodie with the sleeves torn off of both. I always thought, where did he get that look? Here we are 19 years ago. Paige comes out in sleeves and it was a vest, not a hoodie, but the sleeves of the t-shirt were torn off. And that's where Randy got this idea. Now that's in my head. I'm thinking Randy Orton has stolen Diamond Dallas Page's fashion sense. And then Paige starts talking about Randy. I sat straight up. Like, oh my God, I'm psychic.
He's talking about Randy Orton in 1997.
Like 8-year-old Randy Orton. No, it was Randy Savage. He challenged Randy Savage to a match at Halloween Havoc. Juventud Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio.
Have they ever had a worse match?
I
hope not.
I mean, it wasn't bad, but it was
sloppy.
It was just a match. They fucked up a bunch of stuff. The finish where they did the springboard Hurricane Rana was perfectly executed.
Yes,
it was awesome.
Ray's springboard Rana at this time was like nothing else.
But the thing was, there's a spot where Ray is standing on the apron and he's holding the top rope. And what they were going to do was a sunset flip powerbomb spot. So Hoovy was going to go on the apron, do the sunset flip powerbomb, and deposit Ray on the outside. Well, apparently Hoovy forgot, and so he threw a drop kick.
Oh.
And Ray, knowing, hold on, motherfucker, that's not the move, just stood there.
Yeah.
He didn't sell it.
Either that, well, that's what happened. Due to the camera angle, we couldn't quite tell. I think Hoovy just missed this dropkick so badly, Ray said, nah.
Well, one way or the
selling.
other, the camera angle that we saw was Hoovy throwing a dropkick and Ray just standing there, and then they did another move.
And the announcers didn't even try to cover it up. Hoovy missed there.
Yep. Well, God bless him.
Yeah.
Hoovy tried to do the corner bump where you go diving into the post and through the ropes to the floor, and he came down straight down on the ropes and nearly broke his ribs.
That was horrible.
There are other moments like this where I thought this is not good, and then Ray saved things by hitting his amazing finish, and it was a 5-star finish.
As far as Hoovy matches go, this wasn't bad.
He has had worse.
Oh yeah,
he's had many worse. Ray has had a few worse than this. Lord Steven Regal versus Alex Wright.
So I forget what the gimmick was, but Regal apparently got arrested for something. Oh, it was on a flight. There was some gimmick on a flight, and he was intoxicated or something. May have peed on somebody, I don't even remember, but the charges were dropped, and so they brought him back here. So during his downtime, he'd been doing a lot of eating and drinking, it looked like.
He had a singlet on, not his normal trunks.
He looked like Big Daddy.
Let's not go that far.
wow.
Now, he goes in there... I'm talking Shirley Crabtree when he was young. Not Loch Ness at the end.
No, I was thinking the English Big Daddy.
Okay, well, anyway, he looks like Big Daddy. And he still goes in there, and he's a better performer than 90% of this roster on his worst fucking day.
Against this guy.
Against Alex Wright.
I hate this guy.
This was not... Wow, Craig.
Alex Wright?
This was certainly not a great match or anything like that, but man, for a guy who was in the shape that Regal was in at this moment, he fucking tore the house down with this guy. I was very impressed.
There was a point early on when Alex was being...
The hell was that?
Something fell over in your house. There's cats everywhere. There was a point early on in this match when Alex was being obnoxious, and Regal slapped him across the face.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where this ranks on the list of great moments in my life, but I know it's too high. But then I looked at all the people in the crowd and I realized, you know what? They loved it too. It's too high on their list as well. Funniest thing is, when I sat down and started watching these, I don't know, I think a JBL interview show had been on the network live, and when it ended, they were just playing a completely random William Regal personality piece. with the William Regal of today, going back over his career. It was like a little 5-minute thing. But he's talking about how he was talking about how people remembered him for different things.
Keep covering this, Vinny.
Brian's going to go investigate.
Someone appears to have broken in.
All right.
That's the only thing it could have been.
Brian's going to go fight crime.
Take something with you. Maybe a bat.
He's got his fists.
Yeah, that's not going to be enough.
Registered as lethal weapons in no states. So Regal's talking here. And it's, like I say, the William Regal of 2016, looking back over his career. And he says, and when he normally speaks, I don't know how to tell. Well, I know he's from Blackpool, obviously. His normal speaking voice is not the same English accent as his William Regal speaking voice.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, when he goes into character, he's suddenly from a different portion of England. But he's talking, he's very laid back and low key, almost a whisper.
Right.
And he says, when I meet people remember from different things. People will say, you are so funny. And they show him doing a skit where he trips and falls over the food table and gets catchable for himself.
Does anyone want some cats?
No.
And they talk about, you were a great technical wrestler. And they show him taking some down and tying them in knots. And people say, you used to beat people up. And they show him European uppercutting the fuck out of people. And then it goes back to Regal of 2016. He just says, yes, I did.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
What are we talking about? Where was this? Network?
That was on the network. So Alex Wright won with a German suplex.
The
Talk
wrong
about.
man won.
Did we mention when I was out skinning
Fighting
cats
crime.
that our main man Alex Wright took the goddamn worst bump from Monkey Flip I ever have seen in all of the years I've been watching wrestling? Did you see this?
I mean, I turned away.
If you're listening to this right now and you just listen to these and you do not watch, I am begging you to go back to this Nitro show and watch Alex Wright taking this bump from Monkey Flip. You've never seen anything like it.
Then he won. He won clean with a German suplex. He's still the TV champ.
You ever seen a cartwheel?
Sure.
Seen him, yeah.
Okay. It's like he was taking a monkey flip and he decided to take a bump by doing a one-handed cartwheel into the ropes.
Got it. Yeah, that sounds bad.
If I were Regal, I would have just beat the shit out of him for that.
Oakland interviewed Ray Traylor. They recapped his beating last week at the hands of the NWO. He dared any of them to come face him one-on-one. They were in Charlotte, North Carolina. He says, I started my career here in Charlotte, and I am back to make sure everyone in the NWO gets put out of wrestling. If I'm going to stand on my own, then I'm going to stand here at 6'6" and 300 pounds, and I'm going to whip some ass. It was another good promo for Ray Traylor.
It's really good till he mentioned Mr. Perfect.
Do you call him that?
Yeah.
Oops. Shit happens. Conan versus the Giant. The Giant killed him forever and won with a chokeslam.
Dude, forever is right. Why did this need to go this long?
It's a heck of a choke slam. Conan jumped off the top rope, and Giant caught him and herked him up and still planted him.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Bobby Heenan joined the announce desk, promised that they would not get rid of the Horseman that easy. Dallas Page versus Stevie Richards.
You know, I've had Stevie Richards on the show. Nice guy.
Sure.
He's got a real job.
He's got a Motley Crue tattoo, too.
Cool fella. I cannot get past this fucking gear that this guy wears in the ring.
I don't know what the big deal is. He was wearing Daisy Dukes and a Striper t-shirt.
Striper half shirt.
That's true.
Cannot take this seriously. And what's funny is...
You weren't supposed to.
When the match was over... But, Vinny, there's a degree of...
Yeah.
You keep saying this. I don't think Stevie Richards looked cool. No shit.
This is CM Punk in the UFC, okay?
Wow.
This is wrong.
Wow. He's better than Punk.
He did do much better than Punk.
Dude, he was way better as a professional wrestler than CM Punk was as a fighter.
Yeah.
But as a fan watching this, it just lowered my respect for the whole product. It's like any fella off the street was in there in a WCW ring having matches. My buddies had better gear.
So, I mentioned earlier about the reaction Malenko got. It was nothing to the reaction Diamond Dallas Page got from these fans.
Gosh.
This was... People watched this whole match on their feet because they didn't want to miss a moment of Page. They were not going to miss anything. They did a wrestling match. It was fine. The best thing is, Page won with a diamond cutter out of somewhere.
Yeah.
He hit all his moves. He hit that pancake power driver he used. He signaled for the diamond cutter, and then he couldn't just hit it. He had to do something wacky. So he put Stevie in the fireman's carry and dropped him with the cutter and pinned him. People loved him. And then Raven showed up to slap Stevie and kick him out of the ring and leave.
I thought it was funny. Stevie was wearing a Striper t-shirt, the Christian heavy metal band. Raven wearing a Cult t-shirt.
Perfect. Good and evil. The dark and the light. Outsiders versus Wrath and Mortis. Outsiders came out and they were totally clowning on the wacky gimmicks of their opponents. They were making jokes into the camera that went over my head. I don't get it.
Craig did a heaving sigh, which is funny because I know you're fixing to get really mad.
Yeah.
But you know what? And I've been very hard on Kevin Nash. I mean, the guy sold a ton for these guys before he won.
He took all their moves.
Yeah.
It's not the match. It was just them in general throughout this show.
That's what they do, though.
Yeah.
But I thought of all shows, this was a show where they actually went out there. Hall always does.
Yeah.
Hall always sells. But Nash went out there, and part of it was that Wrath was not intimidated one bit by Kevin Nash. Probably because he used to be Adam Bomb when this other fucker was Diesel, and they were on the same level. He went in there, and he was chopping the shit out of the guy, and he was booting him right in the face. He didn't give a shit. And then Kevin Nash got in there and sold for everybody, and then won.
Yeah.
I watched all their hijinks on this show, and I just did a quick Google search. The Outsiders kept the tag team titles till February.
They're not the best tag team champs I ever saw.
No.
I mean, they're not even. There's at least Steiners are better. Harlem Heat are better. Faces of Fear are better. There are many tag teams on this show who were better at having tag team matches. That's true. But they went out here. They were top guys. Wrath and Mortis weren't. Wrath and Mortis were a created team who only brought in so Glacier would have somebody to wrestle. So,
keep in mind that they were supposed to lose those tag team titles to the Steiners at Road Wild.
That's right.
They kept them for another 6 months or so.
But like Brian said, they gave these guys everything. They took all their moves. They sold. They bumped. They cut them off, and they finally won, and they went over strong. Nash hits his powerbomb on Mortis. Hall clotheslines Wrath out of the ring, and Nash gets the pin with the foot on the chest. But you know what? Winners should get over strong. There should be decisive winners in most matches. Not every match needs to be 87 near falls, and one guy gets the last lucky 3 count, and next time it could be totally different. It's okay to have a match that leaves you thinking the winners are much better than the losers.
So right after this match, all of the NWO came out, including Eric Bischoff, and this is when I got annoyed, because these two clowns, and I'm calling them clowns, were doing nothing but goofing around, playing grab ass. Nothing was serious to these guys.
This was a bunch of 40-year-olds who were basically acting like high school kids playing with a camcorder for the first time.
Yeah.
Hate it when those 40-year-olds are
acting like juveniles.
You know what's funny is, so I'm going to give another plug here.
Sure.
The days in the life of Bryan Alvarez. If you go to my Twitter at Bryan Alvarez ordering information, I'm not getting a dime.
Good.
Granny has made so much money off this book. I can't even tell you.
You write it down?
Granny has made more money off this book than I was paid to do the audible version of Death of WCW. To do the actual recording of it. Think about that. Anyway, you can get the ordering information on my Twitter. So I was talking to her about the audiobook, and she's strongly thinking about it. And she says to me, I got to ask you one question, Brian. How do you pronounce Hulk Hogan? And I said, Hulk Hogan. She goes, oh, okay. I just want to make sure I don't mispronounce it when I do the audiobook. And I thought to myself, how in the world can you not know how to pronounce Hulk Hogan? And it's ironic because on this show, Kurt Hennig came out, and he's wearing Ric Flair's robe, and he cuts a promo and says, Hog Hogan, I present to you Ric Flair's robe. That's what he called him, Hog Hogan.
Yeah, that's great funny.
Cool story, bro.
So Savage accepts Page's challenge for a match at Halloween Havoc.
Byron, I like to be called.
Hogan says he was around when Piper was president in the WWF. Piper never told him what to do. Passionate chants of Hogan sucks. Pretty much drowned him out for a while. It took way too long to tell the joke about telling Roddy Piper he could go eat down there. Hogan vowed to put him out to pasture.
Big crotch chop.
Many crotch chops in the show.
Many.
And he said after Sting saw what Hogan did to Piper, Sting would want no part of Hogan.
You know, it's funny. Everybody remembers the crotch chop from DX, but there have been way more crotch chops by the NWO than DX has ever done in their career at this point.
They definitely stole it from these men. Hogan Piper video package. Ultimo Dragon versus Eddie Guerrero.
God damn, this saved the show.
Oh, yeah.
What a fucking unbelievably good match. Eddie Guerrero just jacked to the gills. Looked great.
Yeah. Eddie was a great worker and he was a great athlete, but he was also a performer and an entertainer. He whips Dragon into the corner.
He was excellent at his job.
He was excellent at everything. He whips Dragon into the corner and Dragon does the headstand into the corner. And Eddie is mystified. What do I do? This man is upside down now. His solution is to grab the referee, use the referee as a battering ram, and charge forward into the corner. So they go charging into the corner. Dragon lands on his feet behind them. And Eddie raises... He had been charging in blindly. All he saw was the back of the ref's shirt. And he pops his head up, and he looks around. Where did Dragon go? And he turns around, and Dragon kicks him, and I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed, and I laughed. It went back and forth. It was all wonderful, and Eddie hit a shoulder breaker and the frog splash for the win. Steve and Michael versus Kurt Hennig.
Your main event.
Hey, let me say some nice things about Mongo. Tied into wrestling today. Mongo comes out, and first off, I love listening to Michael Buffer's ring intros. He must write them himself. So, Ric Flair was killed the night before, put on a slab.
That's right.
And so his good friend Mongo rushes to the ring for revenge. And very quickly, he gets his leg chopped. This Mongo did a hell of a job selling his leg.
Amen.
Yeah, you're right.
Because you know what? He was a football player, and I'm sure he fucked up his knee 1,000 times and knew exactly what it felt like when you were hobbling around on one leg.
And how you moved when you were hobbling around on one leg.
That's right. Now, I was not a football player.
You?
But when I was a kid, I watched a lot of Bret Hart.
Because that's the same.
And I studied this man. I studied how he sold. Because Bret Hart was very, very good at his job. And if someone beat up his leg, boy, could he sell a bad knee or a bad shoulder or a bad whatever. So that was my replacement for not having been a football player or an athlete who tweaked my knee 1,000,000 times. I watched Bret Hart. Anyway, my point of all of this is, the kids growing up today watching wrestling, who the hell are they watching to learn how to sell for when they become wrestlers someday?
That's a terrifying thought.
Will Ospreay.
Nobody! They ain't watching anybody nowadays.
God, I never thought of that.
I've been thinking about it a lot. I think about all of these guys that I watched. When I was a kid, I had to learn by osmosis watching these guys. Like, how do you sell a bad leg? How do you perform when somebody is taking out your shoulder? What would you do if you blew out your shoulder? How would you sell it? I watched all of these great wrestlers who knew how to sell these body parts. And I think these kids nowadays coming up watching wrestling, they don't have a goddamn clue how to sell. Are you going to throw their ass into a wrestling ring or the performance center, and they're going to be totally out to lunch? And we see it with a lot of these guys that they were fitness models or whatever. They didn't grow up wrestling fans. You try and get them to sell a leg, they have no clue what they're doing. It's a sad state of affairs. But goddamn, could Mongo sell his knee? He was great.
So the whole match was Hennig taking Mongo's knee apart. Every once in a while, Mongo would get a comeback, but his leg would lock up and he'd pause, and Hennig just kick him right in the knee again, and they go back to it.
Kicked his leg out of his leg.
Did.
They kicked his ass.
Finally, Mongo made his big comeback. Hennig is bumping all over the place, as Kurt Hennig was wont to do. And then Hennig ducked a clothesline, hit the perfect plex, and won. Just like that.
Yep.
You know, I have argued many times that sometimes a heel's got to win clean and I don't like too much bullshit and interference and fuck finishes and that sort of thing. But boy, did Mongo look like a numbskull here.
This was really out of nowhere. This was... There was no build-up. He hit a move and then hit the move, and it was over.
Yeah, he went for his football tackle, and Hennig moved, and he bonked his head on the bottom turnbuckle and then got pinned. What a geek.
When you look back at this, what happened on this show, what happened the night before, what's happening in the past 6 months to a year, they had to have seriously thought we're done with the Horsemen.
Oh, yeah.
They've
been trying to kill the Horsemen forever.
Arn's retired. Flair's on the shelf for now. We'll bring him back. He'll be Ric Flair. This will be great. But they said Benoit was not here because he had suffered a concussion in War Games. Here's Mongo losing clean to the brand new NWO guy in Charlotte. After the guy they invited into the club had turned on them the night before. I'm just personally just done talking. But anyway, yeah, they were writing the Horsemen off the show.
Don't get flustered, Vinny. You're a professional.
Apparently,
Vinny, what you got to remember is if you think they're writing the Horsemen off the show now, just you wait. Dude, it gets 1,000 times worse. The treatment of these men in the Carolinas, you ain't seen nothing yet.
They practically run him out of the company.
They buried Ric Flair in the goddamn desert. Have we forgotten?
That happens, yes.
Just you wait. This Nitro was no good. Couple of good spots, but...
One good match.
Nitro
106, also September 22nd.
Also a legendary show in some ways.
It certainly was.
Nitro
106, also September 22nd.
Also a legendary show in some ways.
It certainly was. No one knew it at the time, I don't think. I guess no one knew that Austin Stunning Vince would be historic either. So the announcers are opening the show.
Dude, the fans that were there knew.
That's true.
They responded like it was historic.
The announcers are opening the show. When Eric Bischoff hits the announce desk, he's confronting Larry Zbyszko. How dare you interfere in the NWO's match at Fall Brawl? And Zbyszko replies by having them show the footage from last year when the Outsiders powerbombed Bischoff off the stage. And said Bischoff is a coward who was too scared to fight, so he joined the NWO. He's going off, and he said this great fiery babyface promo. And then he talks about the guys who are being poor journalists and under terrible situations. And he had a line about the space shuttle blowing up and, quote, bodies flying everywhere.
I'll tell you exactly what he said. First off, when Bischoff came out, Larry's yelling at the other guys not to leave. He does not want to be abandoned by these guys. They've got to do their job. Bischoff looked like he could hardly remember his lines, pausing for long periods while he tries to figure out what he's going to say. Larry, is noted, cuts a hell of a promo. It was a hell of a promo. And then when he's done, Bischoff has just vanished. Bischoff does not respond to him, calling him a spineless little dweeb. And so then Larry begins chastising the announcers. Don't leave your post. He says, Dan Rather kept broadcasting when the Challenger exploded and bodies were flying everywhere. It's like you just compared the Challenger explosion to Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan leaving the ring when the NWO come out. Really? You were doing so well. And you had to do that.
You had to bring that into play.
That took away from the entertainment portion of the program.
Sure did.
And then Bischoff, he's trying to do this heel promo, and he concludes by saying, tell that to your new commissioner, Roddy Pieper.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that. Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Silver King.
In a Cirque du Soleil match.
The fans very quickly spotted something in the higher portions of the building and stopped paying attention to the match. It was Raven coming through the crowd. So, here we are in 2016. I guess the Bayley Sasha match at Brooklyn was in 2015, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So last year, but the reverse top rope Frankensteiner is still a huge move and very, very scary. So imagine what it must have been like when Ray busted this move out in the Nitro opener in 1997. A reverse top rope Frankensteiner, and it wasn't even the finish.
Dude.
It wasn't even a big spot.
It wasn't even not only the finish, but Silver King was up. I counted it. It was like 3 seconds. He was back on his feet doing moves.
Well, to be fair, Silver King didn't land on his head.
He didn't land on his belly.
Well, you know, that's what I think they were thinking, which is, I just landed on my belly. I'm cool.
Yeah, but he got all the way over. This man is more athletic than Sasha Banks.
The idea is it's supposed to be spectacular, and it should be a finish, and it wasn't.
Or at least a big moment. Fans had never seen that move before. So Eddie comes down the ramp. He distracts Ray, which lets Silver King cut him off. But then Silver King misses a splash, and Ray hits the West Coast pop for the win. Place did go nuts for the finish.
This was one crazy high spot after another. There was nothing resembling a wrestling match. No. I can't even call it a video game.
It was a highlight reel.
There was no power bar.
It was a live-action highlight reel.
Men were not getting weaker as a result of men hitting moves on them.
I see.
It was just move, pin. And they were all outstanding moves.
Oh, yes.
Like, I should have hated it, but it was great.
But it was so cool. You couldn't. No,
I mean, you can't do a whole show of this. But every now and then, having a match like this is great.
So Eddie is yelling at the ref. The ref is leaning through the ropes yelling at Eddie. Ray does a flip dive over the ref onto Eddie, wipes him out, picks up the cruiserweight belt, and leaves it across Eddie's body. And Halloween Havoc's coming. Hugh Morris versus some anonymous random guy. Bill Gomer or Gordon or something.
Can I say something about this match? This was way more competitive than I remember.
Mm-hmm.
He showed up and they had a match. It was only 3 minutes long, but they went back and forth. And the fans start getting into this guy, and he kicks out of a moonsault, hits a body slam, then he lifts the guy up and hits another body slam, and then he hits a jackhammer and wins. And the crowd goes crazy for the guy. And he stands there and he looks at the camera and he goes, "That's one."
Uh-huh.
Now, the simple thinking is that you take an impressive-looking guy, you have him never lose, and he will get over. And granted, this has worked before. Ryback it worked for crying out loud. Goldberg, there are other guys, but it doesn't always work. Do you remember Crimson?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
This was TNA's attempt at making Goldberg. It totally did not work.
No.
So, I don't know if people give Goldberg enough credit. On day one, this dude was green as grass, but man, this guy had a presence. He had a look. He had an aura. And I'm still baffled they didn't fuck this up until
it is
a year and a half later. It's mind-boggling.
They made it through match one.
Yeah. But man, it was very clear watching this that this dude totally had something from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think WWE to this day, they think a guy has something and they push him real hard, but maybe he doesn't have it. Goldberg absolutely had it here on the very first day.
The best part of this is actually, it was a totally subtle thing. Bill's just standing there, and he's huge, but he has no entrance, he has no pyro, he doesn't even have a name. He's just Bill Goldberg, and he's standing in the corner, arms crossed, looking mean, which is a great thing for Bill Goldberg to do. And Hugh Morris comes out, and this is a hot crowd all night anyway. Total superstar reaction for this top-of-the-bottom card guy. And he comes out, his music's playing, he's huge, he looks great, and he's doing his wacky open arms pose, and they're going crazy. And they loved Hugh Morris. And he hit that moonsault, and everyone's cheering, and they count 1 and 2. What? And it caught him totally off guard. And Goldberg came back, whipped his ass, won clean, and they went crazy for him too. And here's the best part. Gene goes to interview him on the ramp. And Goldberg blows him off, has nothing to say, goes to the back. Gene could not believe he would pass up promo time, and that was that.
Dude, that was a great touch.
Mm-hmm.
They went to interview him because in storyline, they figured out, shit, this guy's somebody.
Mm-hmm.
He just beat Hugh Morris. And then Goldberg blows him off because he doesn't give a shit about that kind of stuff. This was perfect. You know, they would have sent a generic brown-haired fella into the ring on Raw.
Goldberg, what are your thoughts?
Yep, and Goldberg would have had to cut a fucking stupid-ass promo, and he would have been dead on arrival.
All I could think about watching this was, this is the opposite of everything they've ever tried to do with Roman Reigns.
Yeah, you leave the fans wanting more because you don't know what the guy's all about. He didn't give you any information. Mm-hmm. He didn't cut a promo. And so you're left going, I want to see more of that guy because I want to figure out who he is.
Yes. And watch him beat more ass.
Right.
They recapped Larry interfering at Fall Brawl. He shoved Scott Hall into a schoolboy, and then he also counted the pin.
This was ridiculous.
Maybe if I'd watched the whole show and had more context, it would have made more sense.
No, it made no sense.
Okay.
And the announcers explained that the NWO had been making their own rules, and so now it was time for WCW to make their own rules. That's how they explained this. It was so preposterous, but you know what? Place went crazy. They loved it.
Disco Inferno versus Alex Wright. Speaking of historic incidents, September 22nd, 1997, I have to believe is the only time we got babyface Disco Inferno.
You know what, though? On paper, you see Disco Inferno versus Alex Wright, and you think this is going to be the wackiest bullshit match ever. The bell rang, and they had a wrestling match.
And
they exchanged holds.
They were professional wrestlers.
And the crowd's going crazy for Disco. And then there was a finish and a title change. In a million years, I would never have imagined that this would have been what it was. It was so weird. I was like, why are you wrestling? What's happening?
So Disco's making his big punchy comeback, and it was pretty clear why he never wrestled as a babyface again. The place did love his personality, his dancing. They loved when he crossed Alex on the ropes and shook the ropes up and down. They did a double crossbody collision spot, but Disco landed on top, and the ref counted 3, and Disco Inferno was your new TV champion.
I just was baffled.
Alex Wright does a move where he body slams Disco, goes to the top rope, he jumps off the top rope high into the air and does a single foot stomp.
Sorta? He's been doing this move for weeks now. I'm still trying to figure out if it's supposed to be a stomp or a knee.
By the way, Tony, he's been doing it for weeks. Tony says, I've never seen that before.
Yes. It was a very Nitro moment. So Jacqueline appears. She drags Jean down to the ring, says she wants to talk to Disco. She says he knows why she's there, and everyone knew why, or she knew why he had been gone for 6 months. He warns her this is not the time or place. She says she could beat him silly, and they both knew it. He said, she said she could beat him, and they both knew it. He says this is silly and absurd to acknowledge. He starts to leave. She pulls him back. He warns her again not to push this, and he leaves. So there you go. One night, Disco Inferno babyface. Now he's a heel going to a feud with Jacqueline. Scott Hall and Six came out for a promo. Did the survey. Said they were for life. So it was a fluke that Luger had pinned him. It was all Zbyszko's fault. He says, tell Terry Taylor that I want Lex Luger right now. He gave Lex maybe 3 seconds. Lex did not appear. Hall says, this proves Lex is a coward. So then he calls out Larry. Larry wastes no time in going down to ringside, but he gets there in a Scott Hall and Six. He says, no, I'm not getting in the ring until that guy leaves. Six won't leave. Hall says this proves that Larry is also a coward. Going back to the announce desk. So we get Scott Hall versus Hector Garza.
That was much ado about nothing, by the way. Mm-hmm. Hall's in there. He's calling the guy out. The guy strides down to the ring. The place is going absolutely crazy. He gets to ringside, and then he goes back. It's like, okay. But they didn't turn on him.
No. Well, he's smart. There was 2 of them.
Well, it was a period in the wrestling world where there was a little bit of logic in wrestling.
Yeah.
And this made sense.
Yeah.
And so it was accepted.
Yes.
When you have a business with no logic, nobody gives a shit about anything.
No. So Scott Hall versus Hector Garza. Total squash. He's stomping him, slapping him, throwing him around, making him look like a fool. Starts fucking with the ref's shirt and untucks the shirt and undoes his bow tie and kicks him in the butt. And then Garza hits a schoolboy and the ref counts 3. And that wasn't even a fast count. He just counted 3 and Garza pinned him.
I think it was supposed to be kind of like a little bit of a fast count. Mm-hmm. But it was not like what was supposed to be a fast count.
Right.
At Starrcade.
So Hall snaps. He lays out Garza with the Razor's Edge. He grabs Mark Curtis, hits him with the Razor's Edge as well. Very casually, by the way. I realize he's way bigger than this dude, but it's still a grown man he's carrying over his head around the ring.
Yeah, he was carrying him and walked over to the camera and cut a promo.
Yes.
Into the camera as he's holding the man up.
Up over his head.
You know what's funny is, this is a famous match. And you would never know it watching it in 2016 because shit like this happens all the time in wrestling now. But back then, the idea that Hector Garza would pin Scott Hall where they slip on a banana peel finish. This didn't happen regularly. Mm-hmm. So, of course, the narrative later became that Hall had put over Hector Garza. That was a big thing back then.
Yes.
Nowadays, I mean, nobody falls for this bullshit anymore. What this match was, Hall beat the shit out of him forever, slipped on a banana peel, and then beat the shit out of him afterwards. I mean, there was nothing resembling putting a guy over. We see this all the time. But back then, it was kind of new, and it did sort of become a thing that people would talk about. Well, Hall put over Hector Garza.
When Garza came out, I realized it was this match, and I noted the irony of Scott Hall being there with the 1, 2, 3 kid on the floor, the last guy who beat him in a big upset.
Yep.
And this is nothing like that at all. In fact, when it was done, I assumed there must have been another Scott Hall Hector Garza match somewhere.
But at least with the 1, 2, 3 kid, they followed it up.
Yeah.
And they made the guy into something.
Yes.
This was like, Hector was one and done.
Uh-huh. 8-man tag, the Villanos and La Parca and Psychosis versus Ultimo Dragon and Ciclope versus Juventud Guerrera and Lismark Jr.
I love this because Ciclope is Halloween.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they didn't want it to be Halloween because it was too wacky. So they called him fucking A. It's the Cyclops. It doesn't fucking matter. He was a Cyclops instead of a fucking pumpkin. Mm-hmm. So then, on this show, he just figured, fuck it, who cares? And he showed up in his Halloween outfit.
Right.
But he's still Ciclope, the Cyclops.
He did have a bandana with one eye tied around his mask. So the eye was there, but the pumpkin was still there as well.
You know, I mentioned this before, but it always amazes me in wrestling. The shit that matters to these people and the shit that doesn't matter. Like, it mattered to them that this motherfucker was not a pumpkin, but he had to be a Cyclops. Why the fuck does it matter? Can anyone answer this for me?
They're equally wacky, yes.
Do you remember when Kane... This is my favorite example of all time. Do you remember when Kane was unmasked?
Right.
And he still had some hair?
Right.
Okay. So very shortly after he was unmasked, they'd shaved the front part of his head, and so he looked like he had a receding hairline, and his hair's all fucked up, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Then he shaves his head off because he didn't want to walk through airports with that stupid haircut.
Or his hair.
So what they did, every day for years, they buzzed his head with like a number 2 blade, so he had a stubble all over. And then they took a flat razor, and they cut his hair back to the middle of his head. They went to this trouble to keep his fucking haircut consistent.
Yeah.
This was during the period where nothing fucking made sense. There were stupid angles that were started and stopped and bullshit left and right, but every day, the goddamn barber backstage had to make sure that he cut Kane's fucking fake hair right. And this is another one. Ciclope
really got
versus
under your
Halloween.
skin.
Just stupid. It's so stupid.
So this match was full lucha rules, no tags, just leave the ring and another guy comes in. As a result, it was a non-stop parade of action. Wasn't always the prettiest action, a lot of sloppiness, a lot of wonkiness, but the crowd loved it. Announcers loved it. I liked Heenan's line where he said they just hit Ciclope so hard he's got 2 eyes now.
Should have said his eye is crossed.
There was a point here, by the way, where they were all doing a parade of dives, and he was flying upside down, and nobody caught him, and he hit the guardrail, he hit the ground, and I'm pretty sure he's just dead. It was bad. So, Psychosis goes after... Let's see. Sonny Ono has Ultimo Dragon. Psychosis goes to hit Dragon. Dragon moves. Ono gets wiped out. Dragon then puts Psychosis in the Dragon Sleeper on the floor. Meanwhile, in the ring, Hoovy and La Parca are going back and forth a bit.
It doesn't matter.
Hoovy gets the win with the wacky roll-up. And I'm sure this was very confusing to a lot of fans, and I'm sure the announcers had no idea what was going on, but let me tell you, no one could have said this was boring.
No, this was very much like that Ray Jr. match.
Yeah.
They took all of the luchadors and they said, just go do a goddamn lucha match. Just do a bunch of moves. And then Hoovy, you're winning. And that's what they did. And they delivered. I loved this. And it was ridiculous.
Oakland brought Roddy Piper out for a promo. Piper said Larry Zbyszko had not been a legal ref at Fall Brawl, so to fix the situation, he is going to be a legal ref at Halloween Havoc. And he talked about his own match at Halloween Havoc, a cage match with Hulk Hogan. The first cage match they'd ever had, and the last, because he was going to finish Hogan once and for all. Said cage matches are brutal and barbaric and insane, and that's why I want one.
It's another legendary match coming up, Age in the Cage.
Who, I think it was Hogan and Flair did a cage match with, like, obviously fake barbed wire on top.
Yeah, that's coming up.
That's at some point before
It's
Nitro
in
dies.
February of either 99 or 2000.
Okay, we got a ways to go.
Because they do the same match exactly 1 year apart. And the first year, they do a 1.1 buy rate. And exactly 1 year later, they do an 0.1 buy rate for the same match.
Well, that's worse then.
365 days later.
Lee Marshall did the road report. I skipped it. Feud of the year.
Oh, my God.
Every year. Faces of Fear versus the Steiners.
I got a question for you guys. In the WWE NXT universe, we got Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. Who do we have like these guys? We got Brock Lesnar.
That's the only one.
And we got Samoa Joe.
Even he. God bless Joe. He's not in not like these guys.
I would classify him there. We had 4 of them in one match right here.
Oh, yeah.
And they weren't the only 4 guys on the show because later Scott Norton comes out. This business is so missing the big, mean fuckers that just go out there and beat your ass. This feud is the best. The match will never get old.
No.
Never. There was a moment, first off, my favorite spot in the world, which is the Faces of Fear backdrop into a power bomb.
jeez.
Yeah.
Where Meng has to, on purpose, fuck up the backdrop every time, just so we can see how powerful the Barbarian is.
Yes.
As he grabs a man out of midair, hurts his ass in the air, and slams him on the mat. I think it was Scott, and it was Rick.
Taking the move?
No, when he gave Meng the
Rick hit Ming with the belly to belly.
overhead belly to belly in ultra slow motion.
Yes.
Slow motion, I thought, you know what? If I got in my car, I could probably drive to wherever this building was and maybe save Meng, maybe catch him. Landed right on his head. Thought he was dead. Of course, he's unfazed because he's Meng. I loved every split second of this match. It was beautiful.
It is the best feud of all time.
Ever.
The only thing I can add that it's a subtle thing you missed. Right before the powerbomb spot, Scott's in there with Barbarian, and he just grabs him and says, I'm going to hit this guy with a dragon suplex.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Think Barbarian had ever taken a dragon suplex before?
Didn't matter.
Think he had any idea it was coming? Scott grabbed him, put him in full Nelson, herked him backwards over his head, Barbarian went flying. So Barbarian's response was, alright, Ming, backdrop this fucker. And he backdropped him through the air so Barbarian could catch Scott Steiner in midair, in powerbomb position, upside down, then herk him up and then slam him down.
You know, I don't recommend it at all. But what I love about Ming and Barbarian in particular is they will give or take anything.
Yes.
Like that one match where Barbarian just walked up to the top rope and threw Benoit like almost over the top rope on the other corner out of the ring with the overhead belly to belly. They'll be dropped on their head. They'll be slammed hither and yon. They don't give a fuck.
No.
And you know what's funny? They never got hurt.
No.
Ming's selling cars nowadays. He's totally fine.
Yes.
Barbarian's still working.
So
What great men.
here's the finish. The Steiners do the elevated bulldog spot where Scott lifts the guy up on his shoulders, Rick comes off the top of the bulldog, and they pin him. So Scott gets Barbarian up on his shoulders, and he turns his back to the corner. Rick goes up top, but Ming shoves Rick off. And the spot here obviously is he goes crashing into Scott, and Scott, knowing this is coming, takes a safe, protected fall to the mat while carefully lowering the man who's working with Barbarian so everyone gets out alive. No. Rick jumps in the air as hard as fast and as far as he can. He crashes into his own brother, who is carrying a 300-pound man on his shoulders, and they all just fall to earth wherever gravity takes them. Madness. Absolute madness. Meng then puts the Tongan death grip on Rick and pins him.
I just loved it. There's a wild schmoz, and Rick goes to give Meng an overhead belly to belly or something, and Meng just grabs his neck and just bulls him to the mat and lays on him as the ref counts to 3. Yes. Like, this is the most beautiful match I've ever seen in my life.
Perfect wrestling match. I want this feud. I realize I'm watching an old show here, but I want this feud to go on for 20 years. I want it to be on every show for 20 years, and I just want them to trade wins forever. I want 50-50 booking till I die.
Sure.
Just win, lose, win, lose.
This is a great example, by the way, when UFC started taking off, and there was concern that, well, this is going to kill wrestling because it's real. You will never see anything like this match in MMA.
No.
Ever.
Oh, no.
As long as you can do professional wrestling matches like this sport will live for fucking ever. God, it was great.
Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan came out for a promo.
Did you notice they edited out Voodoo Child?
Yes, they did.
I don't know. Where do they put this, the NWO theme?
No, they got a wacky, their own.
Oh.
It's funny, too, because Hogan is, singing or mouthing along to the song, and the song is not playing Voodoo Child. Apparently, the Hendrix estate did not grant WWE permission to use it.
You don't say.
There's moments on Saturday night where Jimmy Garvin will come out dancing to Sharp Dressed Man, but we can't hear Sharp Dressed Man.
I want to mention one more thing about the last match. When it's over, because the Faces of Fear have won, for some reason, in the list of replays they decided to show us, out of all of the slobber knocker action in this match, one of the replays is Meng and the Barbarian walking down the ramp before the match started. And you hear their native music, whatever you want to call it in the background, tribal music, and they're just walking down the ramp in slow motion, and they're wearing something resembling fur.
Yeah.
They're like, this is the best team ever. There's no tag team act that I love as much as this one. Honestly, in all of wrestling history, I can't think of one. I don't want to hear about the Road Warriors or the Steiners. I love them too, but nobody, to me, matches these two fuckers. Should be in the Hall of Fame.
There was a show, a Nitro, a month or two back, where they had a very brief audio problem, and we didn't hear the announcers or the live crowd. All we could hear was the Faces of Fear's music. And when it's isolated like that, it's very soothing and peaceful.
It really is. It is the calm before the storm. And when the match was over, both guys look in the camera and they just start screaming in some foreign tongue. I have no fucking idea what they said, but I'm like, barking. You tell them, Meng. You barking. Tell them.
So Bischoff and Hogan come out for a promo. Hogan is wearing Ric Flair's robe with the sleeves torn off. Talks about Curt Hennig's great acting performance. Says Flair is washed up. And Piper had lied to his wife and kids when he promised to come home. That's true. He's got him there. He vowed to win the cage match with Piper, hurt him real bad. He ran on Piper for a while, and it ended. Randy Savage came out for a promo. Now, I don't know if he lost his ski goggles, but he's come out here for a while, and he's been so meticulous with his gear that he has had a bandana on his head and goggles over his eyes, and the lightning bolts on the bandana match the lightning bolts on the goggles. So he's out here in all his black and white NWO gear and yellow plastic sunglasses. Like he was getting dressed to come out, the goggles didn't make the trip, and he shouted, "Does anyone have any sunglasses I can borrow?" So he does this promo. He runs down Dallas Page, says he's going to beat Page at Halloween Havoc. Also, Ric Flair will never come back. This led to, I promise this actually happened, and I'm not making it up, Macho Man Randy Savage versus Stevie Richards.
Whoa.
I am not the only one who had a hard time processing this. Randy Savage was also not sure this was the right match. Checked with Stevie, checked with the ref, left the ring for a while to check with other people. I'm supposed to wrestle him? He beat Stevie up for a long time. He threw him to the side and took the ref so Liz could choke him. He confronted Raven, who rose to his feet, but Liz ran over and convinced Savage to go back into the ring. And Savage hit the top rope elbow, and he won.
It was a great moment when he's over there and he's staring down Raven, and it might have been Bobby Heenan, but one of the announcers goes, "So Randy Savage will fight anybody." And I thought, I believe that.
Oh, yeah.
And we're missing guys like that today as well.
We need more insanity in wrestling.
I mean, we got, again, people. Brock Lesnar and Samoa Joe. Who else do we have that'll just fight anybody?
So Raven hits the ring, has a stare down with Savage. Savage throws the ref down. It looks like it's going to get physical, but Raven turns. He DDTs Stevie. Savage says, well, I'm done, and he leaves, and that's that.
Mike Tenay says, and I quote, "What a love-hate relationship between Raven and Stevie."
Stevie loves him and Raven hates him?
Is that what it is? Because I've been missing the
that
love.
Makes more sense than anything else I can put together.
This seems like a hate relationship and nothing more.
Raven wearing a Ministry Psalm 69 t-shirt. Stevie Richards, Poison.
Talk dirty to me, I believe.
I think it was.
Yeah. Conan and Scott Norton were supposed to wrestle Harlem Heat. Booker T comes out. He says, Stevie Ray has torn his Achilles. He's not here, but I will fight any of you NWO guys one-on-one. Norton says, look, it's not our fault your brother got hurt. You signed to wrestle a tag match. You are wrestling a tag match. And in fact, it was really 3-on-1 because Vincent was out there too. So Booker tries to go it alone against Norton, Conan, and Vincent. And I don't know if this is his first high-profile singles match, and he's really excited, or what. God, he was sloppy. He fell down on everything. And then they just triple-teamed him for the DQ. It sucked, and I have no idea what the point of it was.
It's a mess.
Booker T looked good in this match. All 2 minutes and 28 seconds of it. But my son was very impressed that was Booker T.
Oh, yeah?
It's the first time he's actually seen... He doesn't watch Nitro with me. Every so often he'll come back in. Is that Booker T? Very impressed with him.
Has he figured out that the Giant is the big show?
Yeah, he's watched that as well.
I was most impressed with Scott Norton, who just wasn't taking no bullshit. You sign for a tag match, you're going to get it. And then, whatever was going on at the end, a brutal fucking mess, but it's fine, because Scott Norton was involved, and I would have it no other way. His matches should not be pretty.
Then had the main event, and this was the 5th time the NWO music had played throughout the show.
Probably.
Maybe 6th.
So it's Kurt Hennig and Jeff Jarrett. And fans don't care. And I was thinking, well, I couldn't really remember any issue between them. Why would they care? I know it's a title match and all, but still. And then one of the announcers pointed out, within like the past year, both of these guys have been in the Four Horsemen and stabbed the Horsemen in the back. Now they're fighting each other.
What a storyline.
Why should I care?
Kurt Hennig versus Jeff Jarrett, I was expecting it to be better than it was.
Oh, yeah.
This is not the old Mr. Perfect. He had a couple of very wacky bumps, but the old Kurt Hennig's gone. And they just went out there and they did some stuff, and I was bored shitless.
I didn't think it was bad.
It wasn't bad. It would
have been more fun if it had been bad.
It was just there. It was just a match.
It was 2 men killing time for approximately 10 minutes. Liz takes the ref. Savage runs out. And he can't just hit Jarrett on his own. He has to get the belt and pass it to Hennig. So Hennig can hit Jarrett with the belt.
You know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of a Triple H match. Because he hits the guy with the belt, and the guy's unconscious.
Yes.
And you could just pin him. Mm-hmm. But no, you've got to hoist his lifeless body up so that you can hit your move. Mm-hmm. Which is, if you think this is real, if you imagine it's real, this was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you do this?
He's already out. Why would you waste the effort?
What a complete waste of energy, Ahmed Johnson.
Can you imagine if UFC, if a guy got punched out and his opponent lifted him up because I must win with a Darce choke?
Yeah, I must do a submission. Let me lift up his unconscious body and put it on. That's what the goddamn referees are for.
Yeah. So Kurt wins with the fisherman suplex. Nothing to see here is what I wrote. The NWO comes out. They take Jarrett apart. The Giant appears. He storms down the ramp. The NWO bails, and the show ended.
Yeah.
All I can think was, I would love to know what the Giant got paid for these 20 seconds of action.
Hey, it's not only that, but what was weird about it was I'm watching this show, and I'm kind of into it, and it's a fun show, and then we get to the main event, and I practically fall asleep. They have a lame finish. They have the NWO run-in, as always. And then here comes the Giant. And as a viewer who watches this show every single week, I could not possibly have cared less. Like, I didn't care one bit that the Giant came down. But the crowd is going nuts. Why? Why were they so excited that the Giant ran in? Because he's big?
Hadn't seen him yet on TV.
They were into everything on this show.
Man.
That's the main event here.
We need more crowds like this
Not
nowadays.
a lot to do in Salt Lake, so
There's plenty to do.
think so.
Can have multiple wives.
I see.
That would keep you busy.
Hey, that's the show, everybody.
Okay, Nitro.
Not as great.
No. Although early, I might have argued that.
And late.
Number 107, also September 29th. The Nitro Girls danced to open the show. We got a Randy Savage, Dallas Page video package, which is good because this feud had kind of going off and on for a while. But as a reminder to the fans, these guys are going to wrestle at the pay-per-view. And you will recall, several months ago, Randy Savage put his hands on Dallas Page's wife and spray painted her. That's a good reason to hate a guy forever. We then got Dallas Page versus Buff Bagwell.
I just can't get over every week how good Buff was until he broke his neck.
That is point A.
He was so good.
Yeah. Point B is how over Page was. What a star he was in 1997. He kind of gets forgotten.
Do you want to know why?
Sure.
Take everybody through what happened when this match was over.
Will do. So they're doing this match. I will add also they had Raven sitting in the crowd and Stevie Richards sitting behind him this week. So they're doing this match. Now here's the story. This crowd thinks the Diamond Cutter is cool. They want to see Diamond Dallas Page hit it on this Bagwell fucker and pin him. And they tease it and don't deliver. And they tease it and don't deliver. And they tease it and don't deliver. And then the ref gets bumped. And they think, oh no, they're going to screw him now. And they go to screw him, but he hits a Diamond Cutter on Vincent. He hits a Diamond Cutter on Bagwell. The ref recovers and counts 3. All is right with the world. This was beautiful.
Did he get beat up afterwards?
He did not.
Wow, you got to be kidding me.
No.
You know, as completely incompetent as WCW was, especially at the end, even they knew how to get over a babyface. Mm-hmm. As we'll see here and at the end of the show.
He wins a lot. When he gets screwed, he does not whine or complain. He overcomes. And at the end, he gives the fans what they want. And then he leaves with them. It's a beautiful segment. And 2 more things to add. Talking about Raven. And this led to a conversation that just had me, I don't even know how to say it, but Mike Tenay says, and it's all everything Mike Tenay says always sounds like it's everything Mike Tenay says sounds like it is being read from a script, which perhaps I should have when I do this show, so I don't mumble like that. But he says Raven represents Generation X, a new breed that is free to place the blame for society's problems on anyone but themselves.
A new breed.
To which Larry says, Generation X better grow up quick. And Shivani replies, oh, they will. Don't you worry about that. It'll hit them sooner than they think. Just an amazing conversation. So just so you know, everyone, nothing ever changes. Old people always think people younger than them are the worst generation they've ever seen.
Of course.
And that generation gets older and blames the people younger than them. Nothing ever changes. So,
this is a surprise to you? Took that conversation?
Just a perfectly concrete example. And it also means apparently, I guess you've seen, guys like Sami Zayn or friendly millennials, but there's going to be a guy named like Millennial Mike. That's a gimmick coming down the pipe, I promise you. So, Page wins. He goes to leave. He has a stare down with Raven, and he walks past him and walks through the crowd. I think that was everything I had on this. Yeah, people love Dallas Page. That's a key. Mike today travels to Mexico to do a report on Lucha Libre and the Mexican luchadors.
It's really interesting because they were doing this because they were trying to get over the masks. Because obviously at Halloween Havoc, they were building up to the Eddie Guerrero Rey Mysterio mask match.
Yes.
Which at the time, believe it or not, Rey was mask versus hair. Or mask versus title.
I think title.
Mask versus title. So at the time, Rey was going to lose his mask. He was going to lose his mask all the way up until the day of the show. And
really?
They talked Eric Bischoff out of it.
Jesus.
Yep. And Mike Tenay does this whole thing about all of the masks. And granted, I mean, he didn't talk about this in the deal, but later when they were doing the Rey Mysterio Eddie Guerrero match on this show, and Eddie's wearing a Mysterio mask, and they called him El Caliente or whatever, and he starts ripping at Rey's mask. I think it may have been Larry or it was Tony, but one of them was like, they don't do that in Mexico, do they? And I was like, have you watched one Lucha Libre match ever?
Ever.
Give me a break, dude.
They're always tearing at masks.
So apparently Mike didn't do a good job covering all of the bases here in this history of Lucha Libre.
Well, this story on Lucha Libre and the Mexican luchadors, this is like the introduction.
You mean he didn't call them the Luchas?
No, there's going to be a series of these. He says we're going to talk about the importance of masks, how the masks are made, the traditions and bloodlines that run so deep in Lucha Libre culture, and we're going to visit a lucha training school, which sounds awesome. And then we got a segment that I love this segment with all my heart. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. I may have liked this more than anything on that Raw, and I love that Raw. Rey Mysterio Jr. comes out for a match. His opponent is not named. He just comes out, his music's playing, he's got his mask on, and then the mask he wears over that to give to the fans. And before he has a chance to give that to the fans, he is jumped by his opponent. A mystery masked man known as El Caliente. And within 3 seconds, I said, that's Eddie Guerrero in a mask.
Dude, I can't believe it took you 3 seconds.
Yes.
I took one look at his physique.
Yes.
It was so patently obvious whose giant vein running down the front of the shoulder that had to be.
Yes.
And of course, the announcers are so goddamn stupid.
They were dropping hints like, that move looks familiar.
But they were dropping hints. It took him like 3 minutes and a springboard diving headbutt inside before Tony finally went, wait a second.
Yes. And the crowd was chanting, Eddie sucks, Eddie sucks. So it's El Caliente versus Rey Mysterio. I don't want to alarm you, but the wrestling was great. It turns out Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio Jr. were outstanding professional wrestlers.
I said it a couple of weeks ago, but Eddie would have been the best guy in the Cruiserweight Classic by a mile.
Yeah.
No, by a mile. I'm not talking like, he's a little bit better than Kota Ibushi. And I know some people are going to get very, very mad, but go back and watch these Nitros.
He was way better.
This guy was out of this world. Him and Benoit and Malenko and Ray.
And Ray.
There is no, well, does it hold up here in 2016? Give me a break.
They've gotten better.
There's nobody like this.
No.
There is nobody like these guys.
So Eddie powerbombs him to death, goes for a pin, but Ray kicks out. And the best part, Eddie...
Before you get to that, let me talk about this powerbomb.
Have at it.
So Eddie grabs him, and he's about to go for the powerbomb, but Ray puts on the brakes. And so Eddie redoes his grip, and he goes for it, and Ray puts on the brakes. And so Eddie redoes his grip, and he goes for it again, and Ray puts on the brakes. And I'm like, okay, where are they going with this? And Eddie redoes his grip, and then he lifts him high into the air, and he powerbombs the shit out of him. I was like, that was a very, very dramatic powerbomb right there.
Eddie Guerrero, whether taking or giving them, he gave every powerbomb 110%, man. The goal was to break the ring with the guy's body. He powerbombs Ray so hard that Ray's back hits the mat, bounces up in the air, and he still has the forward motion for the powerbomb, and actually he bounces backwards between Eddie's legs. So Ray kicks out of that. Now Eddie is frustrated. He lays him out and thinks, I'll finish him off with my favorite maneuver, the frog splash. And he takes 2 steps towards the corner, and he stops and grabs his head. Thinks, wait, that will reveal my identity. I can't do that. And he goes to do something else. He doesn't go to the top rope at all. He's beating on Ray and beating him, and then Ray drops this insane double jump Rana for the pin. This may have been a better match than anything on what that was the pay-per-view we just watched?
Clash of the Champions.
Clash of the Champions. This and it was like 6 minutes.
Hey, they go 12 minutes and have a 5-star match in like 4 weeks.
That's great. That's great news. So I haven't watched it in a long time. So first of all, the match is great. Then Ray has a long struggle. He eventually unmasks Eddie. At this point, the announcer's like, this means Rey Mysterio just pinned the Cruiserweight Champion. So everyone's happy about that. Just a beautiful pro wrestling segment. Gene brings the Giant out for a promo. The Giant says everyone had seen Curt Hennig slam Ric Flair's head in the door after the War Games match. Note it was after the match. It was unnecessary, he says. And he promises that payback will be hell. We had one of like a dozen production snafus where they're throwing it to commercial, but suddenly stop because they've got to show Sting in the crowd. And they show Sting in the crowd, and they cut to a different camera where you can't actually see Sting. Bill Goldberg versus Barbarian.
How about that? This match was terrible. Now, you know what? I love matches where two big dudes just... How many times have I talked about this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was just ugly.
I disagree. I thought it was fun. It was not great. I've seen better Barbarian matches. I've seen better Goldberg matches.
I wouldn't call it terrible.
I think you just,
but it was a train
you just
wreck.
did.
It was two trains running into each other.
It was ugly. I will concede that.
Thank you. That's better. It
certainly was
very,
ugly.
very ugly.
But I would also argue that the ugliness, in a way, helped. Because Goldberg was doing matches unlike anything else on the show. How many times do you see Raw, you watch 8 matches, and you realize those 8 matches were the same match done by different people?
Dude, I love an ugly match, but this was new standards for ugly. This was bowling shoe ugly.
So, I did love the spot where Barbarian's got him in the corner, and he's throwing punches, and Goldberg starts to no-sell them. So Barbarian does what Barbarian would do, and just hits him harder. And Goldberg sells. And then Goldberg hits like 3 moves in a row, and then the jackhammer for the win.
Tony Schiavone is baffled.
Yes. I will also acknowledge not many guys could get away with having a match that's ugly and still have enjoy it, but Bill Goldberg had an intensity in the top
He did.
5%.
I mentioned this last week.
He was
this fella had something.
a very special talent.
And you know what? I will say this about it, even though it was very, very ugly. When he beat Hugh Morris, it was an upset. It was something you didn't expect, but it was like one mid-card guy. When he beat the Barbarian, now it was 2 mid-card guys. And it actually felt like the beginning of something.
Yes.
Way more than the first one did. And he did, in fact, look into the camera and he said, that's 2.
That's 2.
So they had the plan at the time of the first match to do a streak. And they did not screw it up.
Okerlund tried to interview Goldberg, held up a picture of Bill in his football uniform, but Goldberg blew him off again. So Gene, ever the pro, didn't miss a beat, said, let's interview Larry Zbyszko. Larry cut actually a hell of a promo. He's going to be the special ref for the Scott Hall-Lex Luger match at Halloween Havoc. He says, I have been thinking of the worst thing I could do to Scott Hall. I put a lot of thought into this, and I've decided the worst thing I can do to Scott Hall is to be a fair and impartial referee. That way, when Lex Luger beats his ass, it'll be fair and square, and Hall will have no excuses. And you can't wait for this to happen.
Larry was good at being Larry.
Oh, it was a great promo. He was the living legend. Nitro Girls danced again. Schiavone talked about walking off the set last week. Said he regretted it in many ways. He promised that he would be hearing from Ric Flair live tonight with a major announcement concerning his career.
Boy, did we ever.
Mm-hmm. Juventud Guerrero versus Disco Inferno.
It's kind of match you don't see nowadays.
We've said this many times. You never know what you're going to get at Nitro.
Yeah, that's what made it exciting.
Now, this was not a train wreck.
It was all right.
Disco did a fine job keeping up with Juvi's lucha spots. Juvi hit all his spots, which certainly helps. And then when Disco cut him off, because he's a totally different wrestler with a totally different style, he just started stomping a mud hole in him. Contrasting styles are good. Zbyszko and Tenay are talking about Ricky Starr, which is awesome. And Alex Wright comes out on stage in electric yellow pants. And he's dancing while Disco is dancing in his orange bell bottoms in the ring. Disco tries a pin, but Alex puts Juvi's foot on the ropes. They tease a distraction finish. The match continued. Then Jacqueline's out there. She's arguing with Alex. She trips Juvi. Disco hits a gourdbuster and wins. This started out fun and turned into a completely overbooked mess.
Well, they're trying to do something with Disco and Alex Wright and Jackie. And so that's what you're going to get.
And a partridge in a
when
pear
you have
tree.
Disco Inferno, Alex Wright, and Jacqueline.
Yes. Randy Savage and Elizabeth came out for a promo. They had nothing to say.
No.
Jeff Jarrett versus Steve McMichael.
Every time I see Steve McMichael, I'm more, I don't know if impressed is the right word, but he tried so hard. And he was not horrible.
All the time.
He did some bad things.
He had
here
some
and there.
horrible nights.
But you know what? He did his best.
He always did his best.
He always really tried. He wanted to be a good professional wrestler.
So let's talk about poor Steve. All his friends are gone. Arn's retired. Flair's on the shelf. Benoit's been out of action.
Wife's left him.
I'm getting to that. Last week, he lost his belt. That bastard Kurt Hennig beat him for his U.S. title. And now the announcers let him know. Obviously, Deborah has been in Jarrett's corner for what seems like a year now. But Mike Tenay says Steve McMichael and Deborah have separated. Deborah has relocated to Georgia.
True.
And he said this in his voice that said, "This is not just pro wrestling bullshit. That man and his wife are separated, and here they are now having to perform together."
Yeah.
So poor Mongo's out here has lost all his friends, lost his belt, lost his woman. She's interfering all the time, pulling his hair. The match was pretty dull. For the finish, Deborah gets in Mongo's face. She slaps him here, slaps her separated from husband in real life. Jarrett nails from behind, gets the pin with a foot on the ropes. An enraged Mongo then stalks Deborah to the back, as Shivani says there are tears in her eyes. This was terribly uncomfortable.
Well, yeah.
It's a harsh business.
This business is a harsh lover.
Mm-hmm. The announcers recap the show. Nitro Girls danced. They showed Scott Hall beating up Mark Curtis last week. Hall and Six came out for a promo.
They had nothing to say.
They said literally nothing. They tried to throw it to commercial, but...
Hold on. I got to talk about one thing they said, though. It's really beginning now. Hall is out there, and he says, "Are you here to see WCW, or are you here to see the NWO?" And the fans booed WCW.
Yes.
And it's only going to get worse.
Yes.
And they never figured out that when they put tickets on sale, it said WCW. The company was still named WCW. You were trying to sell WCW merchandise and tickets and pay-per-views, and you were training your audience to think that WCW sucked. Nobody reeled them in.
No. So here was at least the second notable production snafu. As they come out and say nothing, they try to throw it to commercial, but Hall just keeps on talking. And the announcers are saying, "We're supposed to go to commercial now. We're just going to let him go? All right." So Hall explains that he's out there on crutches, but if he has to crawl to Las Vegas, he's going to take care of Luger at Halloween Havoc. Finally, they take a break. They come back, and it's Chris Jericho versus Six. Jericho's WWF theme played on Nitro will never not be funny. Having this good match, Jericho hits the Silver King dropkick.
You know what this is like? It's like when they took the original Star Wars and they started putting stuff in from the prequels.
Sorta. Yeah.
It's just bizarre. Why is his Y2J music, which is based on the Y2K computer bug story from 1999, his music here in 1997?
Why is the Lionheart concerned with breaking the walls down? Plus, it's just, we never heard that song on Nitro, so it's an unavoidable cognitive dissonance.
Why not just take his old WCW music and keep playing it?
Or any of 1,000 stock themes. Meanwhile, when the Road Warriors come out on the old NWA shows we watch, it is a generic stock theme, and we don't hear their perfectly fine WWF song. So Jericho goes to the Silver King dropkick, and Six decides, this would be a good time for me to stand here on the apron and take a belly bump to the floor. Ow. Jericho follows with a running dive, goes for a giant swing, and there's a reason he doesn't do that very often. He went for the Boston Crab, but Hall distracted him with the crutch, and Six hooks Jericho in the crossface chicken wing. The ref goes to check if it's a submission, but Hall hits the ring and intimidates the ref in the corner and bullies him to make sure the match continues. Finally, Larry Zbyszko comes out and breaks up the hold. Jericho disappears.
Why did he want it to continue?
He just wanted to torture Jericho.
Okay, because I was watching it and I thought, you're preventing your man from winning via submission. Torture him afterwards.
Yeah, well, there's a point there too, but they just wanted to break his arm. They're just dicks.
He can still break his arm after he submits. Get the winner's purse. Then break his arm.
So
Take away his money and send him to the hospital.
So Larry hits the ring. He breaks up the chicken wing and has a stare down with both dudes. And finally, Luger comes out to stand by Larry's side, and the NWO fled from this fair fight.
At least they did something heelish on this show after their babyface promo.
Ric Flair called into the show.
Dude, this guy had a lot to say.
Yes, he did.
I believe he was on the phone for an hour. And it was funny because Ric Flair is on the telephone. And he's cutting a better promo than anything I hear nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
And let me repeat this. He's on the telephone. He is on a telephone connection with severely limited bandwidth. I can feel the emotion in his voice. I can see the tears running down his cheek as he does his promo. And I'm sitting here going, Ric Flair on a telephone can cut a better promo than everybody in this business nowadays.
Yeah.
And I'm just in awe, and then I'm still in awe, and then I'm thinking, why are you still talking? And then he talked for like another 5 minutes. This did not need to go this long. He overshot his target.
So he says he has watched War Games, he's watched Nitro. He wants to thank Curt Hennig for giving him the wake-up call he needed. He said he got beat up by 5 guys because he let his guard down. And the Ric Flair 5 years ago would have taken Hennig out a week before War Games. A week from now, he said, the stitches are coming out. And then I'll be coming back to take care of Hennig as soon as I can.
Stitch has been in there a long time. Holy smokes. That's quite a contusion.
Okay. He said, watching Hennig pass Flair's rope to Hogan was like driving an NWO truck through his house. He said he'd wrestled Hogan many times, drawn huge gates, he was sure to mention.
I thought it was funny when he talked about the NWO truck driving through his house, and then I thought, I bet the NWO did have a truck.
They did. The Giant had it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we had a truck.
No, there was an NWO monster truck.
There was an NWO monster truck, right?
Yeah.
So, he says, Hogan, you are not worthy to wear that robe. I'm going to come take it back. Now, as for my friends in the Horsemen, Arn Anderson's retired. Chris Benoit and Steve McMichael are good friends of mine, and they don't need to worry about me anymore. Benoit is the greatest pound-for-pound athlete in the sport. I want you to go your own way. Mongo, you're a Super Bowl champion and an all-pro, just getting started in this sport. I want you to go find your own way. I want to break up the Horsemen so you can take care of your own careers and not worry about me. This just had me dancing because it means the dysfunctional Horsemen have finally ended. A year and a half too late. He says he's going to handle his own personal matters. What follows is going to be illegal and immoral. He promises to come back and take care of business.
What follows? What follows in Ric Flair's career is going to be illegal and immoral?
Good point. So they've been saying, hey, fans, we know you have a Nitro parties every week. Send us your videos. We'll put your video on TV.
I want to add one thing to the Flair thing.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Flair spends 15 minutes talking about disbanding the Horsemen. It's a split screen, by the way, and you can see Tony he's looking at both guys, and he's putting his hands up. And after 15 minutes explaining the hows and whys and the intricacies of breaking up the Horsemen, they cut back to Tony Schiavone, who says, are you telling us you're breaking up the Horsemen? And then Flair's like, well, it's more going to be a hiatus. I was like, that's not what you just said. Anyway, this went on way too long.
So they showed a Nitro party video. A bunch of nerds from Brown.
Man, when they were talking about Nitro parties, it just seemed so cool. They're like, we're having Nitro parties all over the country. All these folks getting together to watch Nitro. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, man, chicks that look like the Nitro girls hanging out, college dorms, girls gone wild.
Yeah, you're thinking beer pong and...
Yeah, half-naked, really good-looking girls.
Yeah.
And then they actually showed a video from a Nitro party, and I thought, well, this is dead.
You couldn't pay me to hang out with this crew.
Why did you air this on television?
I don't know. It's a bunch of nerds, way too many nerds, in a way too small room, watching a tube TV, and they had, like, punch and candy. It looks so lame.
Looked like a party the NWO would hang out at, actually.
Eric Bischoff,
Given their track record,
came out for a promo. He plugs Hogan's movie. He says Sting only shows up when he knows Hogan isn't here. They plug the Sting has been making unpromoted, unadvertised appearances at arena events to ambush NWO members. Says this proves there's collusion between Piper and Sting. He dares Sting to show up at Halloween Havoc, and that's it.
Yeah, that was boring.
Wrath versus Lex Luger.
Oh, okay. I've said it before. I will say it again. I will admit if I am proven wrong later. But Lex Luger winning and then losing that world title at Road Wild, he won it on Nitro and he lost it 6 days later. That was the beginning of the end for Lex Luger. It has been all downhill for this guy.
It may have been the end.
I think it was the end.
It's been so sudden and obvious and dramatic.
I mean, the fans, they still kind of cheer. I mean, they cheered big when he got the rack, but the reaction Lex Luger gets today is nothing like the reaction he was getting in July and August. His matches suck. I think he knows, dude, it's over.
When he came, there's a point in this match, and keep in mind, barely a month ago, he was the biggest star. We couldn't believe how popular he was. There was a Luger sucks chant here.
That's true. It was only a few guys, but
it was a vocal minority, but it was there. A month ago, those same 8 guys that tried, they've been drowned out by thousands of screaming lunatics. Now, that's the big picture thing, and really is the most important takeaway. Now let's talk about Lex Luger and Wrath as wrestlers. Lex at his best was very good. Now, people forget that because his best was early in his career, and once he started to tail off, he tailed off quickly, and by the end, he was very bad. But the first thing they did here was they locked up. Lex grabbed a headlock, Wrath pushed him to the corner, and the ref goes to get a clean break, and Lex just can't get this guy off him. All he wants to do is get a clean break from this kid. And eventually the guy hits the ring, and a look flashes over Lex Luger's face. And when Lex Luger gets a look in his face and says, "Oh my God, this guy sucks," that guy really, really sucks. Match continued. There was more ample evidence that Wrath really, really sucked. There was a bicycle kick so bad, I can't believe they didn't edit it off the network. Lex makes his comeback with some lariats, hits a power slam, punches out Vandenberg, hooks the torch rack and wins, and gets the hell out of there.
this was so bad. This was so bad. It's amazing how they killed Lex Luger.
Yet another production snafu, probably the worst one. They throw it to commercial. Tony says, "We'll be back for our main event." And the music's playing, and there's like a crowd shot, and then you hear Tony and Heenan, and they're going over their formats and saying, "What's supposed to be next?" "I don't know, we had Piper already. What is going on?" Because the show was being changed on the fly, and the announcers had no idea what was going on, and the director had no idea what was going on, so he didn't go to commercial. He let us hear that the announcers had no idea what was going on.
I love that the people digitizing this for the WWE Network are leaving this shit in. They probably hear it, and they laugh their asses off, and they don't give a shit, and they put it on the network as is.
Was there ever a point where these Nitros were being shown on like the pre-network stuff, like Classics or 24/7?
Some of them.
Okay. Because there were signs in the crowd that were censored, and it was the old, well, it was the block WWF logo.
Yes, they had 20 hours of programming a month on WWE Classics.
Yes.
So there is a finite amount of stuff that aired on the Classics on Demand. All of that stuff has been edited. Mm-hmm. So you will see Raws that have a bunch of weird edits and bleeps and stuff like that.
Yes.
The majority do not.
Okay. I was just a little confused.
Why they chose this episode, God only knows.
Kurt Hennig versus the Giant in the main event. So Hennig's bumping all over the place. Giant spits in his face and then invents the stink face right here on Nitro. Rikishi stole it from the Giant. Giant misses a clothesline, takes a huge flying bump over the ropes to the floor. Hennig beats him up there for 15 seconds, and he throws him back in, and he grabs his head. I think, what the hell is he doing? And he throws Giant's arm over his own head, and he stands up straight and looks at the crowd. I think, oh, okay, this is going to be funny. And he grabs the Giant's great big leg. And it's like a chihuahua wrestling with a black lab. This is just not going to happen. And then lo and behold, this motherfucker hit a fisherman suplex on the Giant.
You know what's funny?
Holy shit!
When we were wrestling regularly, you and I would often face Sonny and Nate.
Yes.
Okay.
Ah, the good old days.
Nobody knows Nate, but I'm going to explain him to you. He was about, like, legit, what do you think, 6'5"?
Close.
He was very, very, very tall. Mm-hmm. He had crazy hair.
That's true.
He was very, very skinny. He probably only weighed like 180, right?
He was not thick.
He was definitely not thick.
He was tall and thin.
Now, I know that people like to say, Brian, they like to compare me to Napoleon. They think I have a short man complex. I don't. I believe a short man complex is a fella who knows he's short, but he does everything he can to pretend he's tall. I realize I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but I never feel like I'm short. Does that make sense? It's very hard to describe.
All right.
I never feel like I'm as short as I am.
I see.
So the point of this is, we would always be wrestling Nate, and granted, I was bigger than I am now. I was probably 180, 185. And we would do these matches, and I would grab Nate, and I would German suplex him all over the ring. And to me, it was like, okay, this guy's a little taller than me, but he ain't that tall. I remember going and watching a video of this. I was so embarrassed when I saw the video of me German suplexing Nate. Because when I saw it on video, I was like, this is like so fake. This is so fake that I'm German suplexing this giant fella here. He was so much bigger than it seemed like he was to me. That's what this was like. When I watched this, I was like, I bet Curt Hennig's thinking, you're a big guy, but I know I can get you up. Just, go up for me and whatever. I'm sure he didn't film it and then look at it, but I'll bet you anything Curt Hennig went backstage and watched it and just thought, what the fuck was that? That was ridiculous. I bet everybody thought that. It was kind of cool looking, but it was so preposterous. This guy doing the fisherman suplex on the Giant.
It was still impressive, though.
That was impressive.
That's the thing.
It was impressive when I German Nate.
I mean, but yes, had Giant dead weighted him, I don't think Curt Hennig could have suplexed him here.
No, Giant had his hand on the guy. He was posting on the guy. He jumped and everything like that. It was impressive. Don't get me wrong, but it was ridiculous.
Yeah. So Giant kicked out. Hennig was bewildered. He goes to intimidate the ref. Giant then does a rope-assisted kip-up. And then a big Giant chokeslam. And then the NWOB teamers hit the ring for the DQ. So this fight's going on. There's like 8 dudes in there, and they're all stomping down the Giant. And then who should come walking down the aisle but the Stinger? And he comes out, place is cheering, they're going crazy. And he's got his trench coat on, and he's wielding a baseball bat. So he gets into the ring, and the NWO bails and says, no, dude, you have a ball bat. We're not going to fight you with a weapon. So Sting says, all right. And he holds the bat over the ropes, and he drops it to the floor. He says, come get some. And they hit the ring, and Sting whips their asses. And I'm not sure these people aren't still cheering 19 years later to this day.
It was so crazy.
Madness.
And I watched it, and I thought, I can see a guy like Dean Ambrose coming out with a weapon and clearing the ring of the heels. But the point is, he'd still use the weapon. Sting came out, and he had a weapon. And the heels refused to get into the ring because he had a weapon. This babyface drops his weapon. The heels are so cowardly that now all 8 of them get in the ring to beat up this one unarmed man, and he beat their asses. And it was funny. I was watching it thinking, this guy hasn't worked in a year or close to a year. Mm-hmm. He had to be so exhausted.
Probably.
Because my God, was he working his ass off when he beat the hell out of these guys.
In a big, heavy trench coat.
Oh, yeah. He was going crazy. And I thought, this guy, he's going to be regretting this in the morning. He's going to need oxygen when he gets to the back. But man, this guy pulled it off. The place just went absolutely crazy for this. It was so great. Again, sure is easy to get a babyface over when you do the obvious psychological shit of beating up a bunch of dudes single-handedly without a weapon. God, it was great.
He beat them, and he beat them, and he beat them. And the show ended, he was still beating them.
And you know what? They still have 3 months left until Starrcade.
That's right.
And they didn't pull the trigger early. They had patience.
Yes.